Hello there, and welcome to Life Beyond Seen, where curiosity drifts quietly through the edges of science and wonder settles like soft sediment on the ocean floor. Tonight, we're not looking up at the stars or peering across time, but sinking down into the part of our planet most of us will never see with our own eyes. A place both alien and earthly, a place where the rules of life bend, twist and shimmer in strange new shapes. The deep ocean, the abyss, the last great wilderness beneath our feet. And perhaps, if you've ever seen a photo of some wide-mouthed, sharp-toothed creature glowing faintly in the dark and thought, "That's terrifying," you've already glimpsed the question we're about to explore together. Why does the abyss seem to breed the ugliest creatures on Earth? Before we start our descent, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Maybe you can hear the rain tapping on your window, or maybe the hum of a city far above sea level. Wherever you are, imagine for a moment that the sounds around you fade away, replaced by the muffled hush of water pressing gently against glass. Picture yourself inside a vessel drifting slowly beneath the calm blue surface. Sunlight shivers overhead. You can still see your reflection in the window. The surface feels safe, familiar, predictable. But we're leaving it behind. If you find this journey soothing or just a small corner of calm to end your day, I'd be ever so grateful if you'd give the video a like or subscribe. It helps this space for slow science and late-night curiosity reach others who might need it too. Now, take a breath. Let your shoulders loosen, and let's begin our descent. At first, the water outside the window is still bright, filled with ripples of gold and blue that move like soft silk in the light. This is the sunlit zone, the part of the ocean that most living things, and most humans, know best. Fish here are sleek, streamlined, beautiful by our standards. Bright scales, smooth shapes, familiar faces. They live in an environment shaped by sunlight, and sunlight shapes the way we think of beauty itself. Colour, clarity, grace in motion, but keep descending and the colour drains away. Reds turn to brown, browns fade to grey, and soon even blue begins to vanish. At about 200 metres down, the world begins to dim. It's not sudden, but gradual, like the dimmer switch of a vast cosmic room being turned lower and lower. This is where the ocean begins to forget the sun. Down here, life starts to look different. It has to. The pressure is heavier, the food is scarcer, and light becomes a memory rather than a resource. The creatures you might meet in this twilight realm are already strangers to the world above. Lanternfish, bristlemouths, glass squids, animals with bodies so thin and transparent that they seem more like thoughts than flesh. Some carry their own light, tiny lanterns glowing with living chemistry. Others vanish completely into darkness, blending in not through colour but through the complete absence of it. It's beautiful in its own way, though not the kind of beauty most of us were taught to recognise. The deeper you go, the less sense human instincts make. Our eyes evolve to navigate a world of sunlight, plants and faces. We associate symmetry with health, smoothness with safety, light with warmth. The deep ocean doesn't care about any of that. Down there, everything that survives does so by obeying physics, chemistry, and an unrelenting scarcity of energy. It's a world built on compromise and adaptation. Every fang, bulge, or strange angle is the result of millions of years of fine-tuning under conditions that would crush us flat in seconds. The abyss doesn't breed ugliness, it breeds efficiency. It just so happens that efficiency, when stripped of our cultural filters, can look terrifying. Keep drifting downward. Around 600 metres, the light from above is almost gone. Your eyes start to strain for detail, and what little you can see comes in faint flashes. A pulse of green light flickers to your left, bioluminescence from a small jelly or a drifting comb. To the right, something longer and sharper glides by. invisible except for the ghostly blue glimmer of light along its flank. It's easy to imagine monsters here, and perhaps that's because the human brain dislikes uncertainty. When we can't see clearly, we fill the dark with shapes. We give the unseen teeth and eyes. But the real creatures down here are far stranger and far smarter than the monsters of folklore. They've been evolving quietly for hundreds of millions of years, perfecting the art of survival in a world without mercy or sunlight. There's a kind of peace in it, though. As the submersible hums lower, the temperature drops to near freezing. The world outside becomes utterly still, a slow ballet of drifting particles, plankton and silt. Life here is unhurried. The creatures that live at these depths don't waste energy on movement unless they have to. Some drift motionless for hours, waiting for a shadow or a glimmer to pass close enough to strike. Others swim slowly, their bodies soft and gelatinous to withstand the crushing pressure without breaking. To call them ugly is to mistake alienness for error. They look the way they do because the environment demands it. No unnecessary muscle, no wasted bone, no excess decoration. If anything, they are the purest examples of evolution stripped bare of vanity. As we move deeper still, imagine the weight of the ocean above us. Every 10 metres adds another atmosphere of pressure, about 14 pounds per square inch. At 1,000 metres, that's 100 times what you feel at sea level. It's the equivalent of balancing a small car on every square inch of your body. Down here, metal groans, glass thickens, and yet creatures live, feed, and reproduce as if it were nothing. Their bodies are soft not by weakness but by design. Hard shells would crack, soft tissues flex and yield. Some have antifreeze proteins in their blood to keep it from freezing. Others replace air bladders with oils or gelatin to maintain buoyancy. If you could see them clearly, you might recoil at first. Wide jaws, distended stomachs, eyes the size of golf balls, but each feature has a reason. Their mouths are enormous because food is rare, and when a meal drifts by, you can't afford to be picky. Their stomachs stretch to hold whatever they catch because it might be weeks before the next one comes along. Their eyes are huge because even a single photon of light might mean the difference between hunger and survival. Beauty, in the human sense, comes from abundance. When there's plenty of food, plenty of safety and plenty of light, life can afford to be decorative. Flowers bloom, feathers shimmer, scales glitter in the sun, but in the abyss, beauty is utility. The anglerfish's glowing lure, dangling like a tiny star before its mouth, isn't there to dazzle, it's there to deceive. It mimics the flicker of prey, drawing the curious closer until they're swallowed whole. The gulper eel's vast ballooning mouth isn't grotesque. It's a trap engineered to vacuum in whatever drifts near. The viperfish's translucent fangs, longer than its own skull, look like the work of nightmare, but they're simply an elegant way to pierce prey that's too quick for a clumsy bite. What we call ugly is just evolution doing math in the dark. Still, it's hard not to feel a little unease looking at them. Maybe it's because their world strips away everything comforting to us. No colour, no horizon, no up or down. Time itself feels different in the deep sea. Day and night mean nothing. The rhythm of life is written in temperature gradients and slow pulses of current, not sunlight or season. It's a world that hums at a lower frequency, where even the idea of speed loses meaning. Some animals live decades without moving more than a few meters. Others spend years waiting for the right moment to spawn, releasing clouds of eggs and sperm into the darkness with no guarantee of success. Every act of survival here is both desperate and patient. There's something almost spiritual in that, though the abyss would never call it that. It just is. It's worth remembering that life didn't appear in sunlight first. The earliest organisms on Earth were born in darkness, near deep-sea vents and chemical plumes. The abyss is not a new frontier. It's an ancient homeland. When we stare at those toothy, luminous creatures and call them monsters, we're reacting to a part of our own evolutionary history we've long left behind. The deep is a mirror of what life once was before it climbed into the light. Its strange shapes and glowing organs are reminders of the billions of years our planet spent as a world of water and shadow. In a sense, when we peer down into the abyss, we're looking backward in time, into the memory of Earth itself. It's also a place of profound silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of compression. Sound travels differently here, slower and denser, bending through layers of temperature and salt. Some creatures use that to their advantage. Certain fish produce low-frequency rumbles by vibrating their swim bladders. Others click or hum through bones and tendons. In the absence of vision, hearing becomes the new sight. Communication is vibration. Awareness is resonance. Even predators listen more than they see, tracking movement by the way sound ripples through the water. It's a reminder that beauty can exist in frequencies we can't perceive. Imagine sitting in that submersible window, watching the last thread of sunlight vanish entirely. The ocean outside becomes a velvet black. Your reflection disappears. You no longer know whether you're sinking or still. Then, in that perfect dark, a constellation blooms, tiny sparks of blue and green, floating organisms lighting up like stars in slow motion. Some blink in patterns, others fade gradually, others explode in quick flares before vanishing again. It's breathtaking. You realise that what seemed dead and empty is actually alive with motion and code. These flashes are messages, camouflage, hunting signals, or love songs. Entire conversations are happening in light. What once looked ugly now feels intricate, deliberate, alive. Humans have a strange relationship with darkness. We romanticize it in art, fear it in life, and misunderstand it in science. But for half the planet's surface, by volume, far more than half, it's just normal. The deep ocean doesn't need our approval. It doesn't crave beauty contests. It just keeps existing, quietly, constantly, evolving in ways we can barely imagine. Every new expedition returns with discoveries that defy expectation. Fish that glow red in infrared light invisible to most others. Shrimp that vomit bioluminescent clouds to escape predators. Worms that build glassy tubes on hydrothermal vents hotter than boiling water. To call any of it ugly feels absurd once you understand how finely tuned it all is. It's easy to think of the abyss as something separate from us, but it's not. The deep ocean regulates global temperature, absorbs carbon, produces oxygen, and forms the base of countless food chains. Its chemical reactions influence the air we breathe. The creatures living miles beneath the surface shape the chemistry of the world above. When we talk about exploring the deep, we're not visiting an alien planet. We're studying the foundation of our own. And the irony is that the parts we call ugly may be the most important of all. Scavengers, gelatinous drifters, microbes, they recycle the dead, balance ecosystems and keep the planet alive. Without them, the beauty we see on the surface wouldn't last a year. You might notice how slowly the sense of time moves here. That's intentional. The abyss teaches patience simply by existing. Down here, seconds and minutes lose meaning. Processes happen over years, centuries even. Corals grow slower than fingernails. Some fish species may live for hundreds of years, their lifespans hidden from us because we rarely see them twice. The idea of urgency doesn't belong in the deep. Every action is measured, deliberate, efficient. Perhaps that's part of its strange allure. In a world that rushes endlessly forward, the abyss reminds us that life can thrive in stillness. If we stay long enough, we begin to sense the subtle texture of the dark. It's not featureless. It has depth, movement, even personality. Small currents drift past, carrying the scent of faraway ecosystems, the faint chemical traces of decaying plankton, volcanic minerals, microscopic life. The abyss is connected to everything above. Every raindrop, every fallen leaf, every grain of soil washed into the sea eventually becomes part of what scientists call marine snow. a slow, continuous snowfall of organic debris drifting down through the water column. To the creatures below, that snow is life itself, tiny crumbs from the banquet of the surface. Some open their mouths to catch it, others sweep it into mucus nets and feed for days. It's an entire economy built on patience and gravity. Ugly? No, ingenious. And as you continue to descend, past the point where most submarines can safely go, you begin to realize that the word abyss isn't about danger, it's about distance. Distance from light, from warmth, from our own expectations. The deep sea is simply the part of Earth that doesn't need us. It existed long before we named it and will continue long after. But there's something strangely comforting about that thought. A reminder that life doesn't owe beauty to anyone, it only owes itself continuation. Somewhere ahead, faint sensors detect movement, a flicker of motion in the black. The instruments hum softly. A shape approaches, large, slow, deliberate. It's not monstrous, though your first instinct might call it that. It's a giant squid, eyes as big as dinner plates, body rippling with slow power. Its arms drift like curtains, its tentacles tipped with hooks. It glides past the window without hurry, unbothered by your presence, a ghost from a world that doesn't need approval or applause. For a moment you can see the faint shimmer of light reflecting off its skin, and then it's gone, swallowed by the dark. You feel small, but not afraid, just aware. And that's where we'll leave ourselves for now, suspended in that space between wonder and understanding. The water around us colder, darker, heavier, yet somehow more alive than ever. Ahead lies a world where light itself becomes an invention, where the strange designs of evolution reach their most extreme and logical forms. The deeper we go, the more those forms will challenge what we think beauty means. But that's part of the journey. We'll keep descending past the twilight, into the crushing dark, to find out why the creatures that live there look the way they do, and what that says about life itself. The last trace of sunlight fades behind us, swallowed not by a sudden line, but by a slow dissolve, a gradual vanishing that the eyes almost refuse to believe. The ocean above becomes a dim ceiling of pale grey, then fades entirely into shadow. You can feel the shift even without seeing it. The lightness of the upper sea, that sense of open air and movement, is gone. The water presses closer now. Every sound feels heavier, slower, like the ocean itself is beginning to breathe around you. The descent continues, though you can no longer tell by looking. Everything looks the same, dark, endless, calm, and yet this is where the real transformation begins. If you could open a window and reach your hand out into this place, you'd feel the temperature drop immediately. The warmth of the surface is left far behind, and the cold begins to creep in like an invisible fog. This is the mid-water world, the region scientists call the mesopelagic, stretching from about 200 meters down to 1,000. Most people will never see it, yet it's home to more life than the sunlit zone above. Billions of small fish, crustaceans and drifting invertebrates fill the space between surface and seafloor. It's not empty at all, just hidden, like a crowded city after dark when all the lights go out. The creatures here live between two extremes, too deep for sunlight, too shallow for total darkness. It's an in-between world, one that never sees full day or night, a place defined not by light but by its absence. If the surface ocean is the realm of colour and clarity, this one belongs to silhouettes. Shapes appear and vanish in soft gradients of blue-grey. Movement is guessed at rather than seen. Everything is a shadow pretending to be nothing at all. The fish that survive here have become masters of disguise. Many are transparent, their organs faintly visible through skin so thin it might as well be glass. Others are mirrored, reflecting the faint glow of the water above so perfectly that predators below can't tell where body ends and darkness begins. A few carry patches of living light along their bellies, rows of tiny bioluminescent organs called photophores that mimic the faint shine of the water above. When a hunter looks up, they blend perfectly with the dim ceiling of light. It's camouflage in reverse, hiding not against the seafloor but against the fading memory of the sun. You might think of camouflage as a still thing, like a lizard matching the colour of bark, but here it's alive. The creatures constantly adjust their brightness and colour depending on how much light trickles down from above. They are living mirrors, fine-tuned to an environment that changes every second as the surface shifts with waves, clouds and storms. It's a delicate balance, this dance between light and dark. Too bright and you give yourself away. Too dim and you stand out as a black shadow against the faint blue background. So they live in the middle, never still, always calibrating. The twilight zone is the ocean's great balancing act, and everything here pays attention. Even the plankton drift with purpose. Some rise toward the surface at night to feed on microscopic algae, then sink again during the day to hide. It's called diel vertical migration, and it's the largest movement of life on Earth. Billions upon billions of organisms travelling up and down every 24 hours, guided by nothing more than light and instinct. Tiny shrimp, worms and fish all join this nightly commute, forming what sonar operators once mistook for the seafloor itself, a dense moving layer of echoes that lifted at night and sank each morning. Imagine that, a living layer of the ocean, rising and falling with the rhythm of the planet, unseen by almost everyone. This constant movement explains why so many of these creatures look fragile or strange. Their bodies aren't built for speed but for drifting. Many have watery, jelly-like tissues that make them neutrally buoyant, neither sinking nor floating, simply suspended. Some, like the hatchetfish, are shaped like thin blades, minimizing their profile when viewed from below. Others, like the bristlemouth, glow faintly along their sides, a subtle shimmer that confuses both predators and prey. And then there are the dragonfish, long and ribbon-like, with translucent teeth and lights that hang from their chins like lanterns. To our eyes, they look monstrous, but to them, it's just practical. In a world without sunlight, light becomes both weapon and language. Every flicker here means something. A flash can be a threat, a lure, or an invitation. Some species use it to coordinate schooling behaviour, a slow Morse code of survival. Others create quick bursts of brightness to startle predators or blind prey. The language of light in the deep sea is more complex than we can currently decode. It's a world of signals and secrets, written in wavelengths our eyes can't even see. Some animals produce red or infrared light, invisible to most others but clear as day to those with the right receptors. Imagine having a flashlight only you could see in a pitch-black world. That's the advantage they hold. It's tempting to call this region eerie or sinister, but that's only because our eyes aren't built for it. What seems empty to us is actually full of movement. Look closely and you'll see small clouds of particles drifting downward, marine snow again, the constant rain of organic debris falling from the sunlit zone above. To the creatures here, that snow is life. It feeds plankton, which feeds small fish, which feed larger predators. The entire system runs on these crumbs of sunlight falling from the surface, recycling the energy of life back into the depths. Every speck is a story. The remains of a leaf, a fragment of shell, a piece of a jellyfish, all slowly sinking through the water column to feed an invisible world. The deeper we move, the more specialised the inhabitants become. Take the siphonophore, for example, a creature that isn't really a single animal at all, but a colony of many tiny ones working together. Some parts of it handle movement, others digestion, others reproduction. Stretching dozens of metres long, a siphonophore can glow in beautiful patterns, spiralling through the dark like a living chandelier. It's both alien and familiar, proof that cooperation is as powerful a survival strategy as teeth. Or consider the glass squid. which carries two enormous eyes, one tuned to detect faint sunlight from above, the other designed to spot bioluminescent flashes below. Each eye serves a completely different purpose, one for defense, one for hunting. It's the kind of adaptation evolution only invents when pushed by extremes. It's easy to forget, drifting here, that you're still in the same ocean you swam in as a child. The waves that sparkle in sunlight are connected directly to this darkness by nothing more than gravity and time. Water circulates slowly, mixing nutrients, carrying dissolved oxygen downward and bringing trace minerals back up. What happens here affects the surface and vice versa. A storm on the other side of the planet can change the light level in this very spot within hours. The ocean is one continuous body, and the twilight zone is its beating heart, a place that connects everything quietly, invisibly. From time to time, the submersible's lights catch something unexpected. A jelly drifts by, its body rippling with pulses of blue light, expanding and contracting in rhythm. Then another follows, smaller, red-tinted, almost transparent. They don't seem aware of us, and why should they be? We're intruders here. To them, the glow of our lamps might be a strange new star or a predator too bright to approach. They simply drift past unbothered. In this part of the sea, curiosity doesn't exist the way it does on land. Energy is too precious to waste on wondering. You act when it benefits you. You wait when it doesn't. Life here runs on a kind of calm efficiency that makes human restlessness seem noisy by comparison. Predators glide through this zone with patience learned over millions of years. The black dragonfish, for instance, lurks in the shadows with a mouthful of curved, transparent fangs. Its skin absorbs nearly all light, making it almost invisible even when illuminated. To the human eye, it looks like a silhouette come to life, a creature drawn out of the darkness itself. Yet it's fragile. Its body would collapse under its own weight at the surface. The very pressures that shape it into something we call ugly are also what hold it together. When you think about it, that's not so different from us. We're all shaped by our environments, though ours happen to be built on sunlight and air instead of pressure and darkness. What seems monstrous in one world might be ordinary in another. The deep sea reminds us that beauty is perspective, not fact. To a dragonfish, we would probably look ridiculous. Colourful, soft, clumsy, overexposed to light. Our survival strategies would seem as bizarre as theirs seem to us. The abyss doesn't judge, it simply adapts. The technology that allows humans to visit this region is fragile too. Cameras and submersibles struggle to function under the immense pressure. Every window must be perfectly curved, every bolt precisely tightened. The slightest flaw can become fatal. The people who descend into this world talk about it in hushed tones afterward, not because it's frightening, but because it feels sacred. They describe the silence, the slow pulse of bioluminescence, the strange sense that time itself stretches differently. Down here, even human heartbeat feels loud, intrusive. It's hard not to feel humbled in a place that's existed unchanged for millions of years, untouched by light or sound or certainty. The twilight zone isn't just a strange curiosity, it's one of the most important ecosystems on Earth. Every night, when the great vertical migration happens, carbon captured by tiny organisms at the surface sinks into this layer, effectively locking it away for centuries. It's one of the planet's natural climate systems, pulling carbon dioxide from the air and storing it far below where it can't easily return. Without this daily rhythm, the atmosphere above us would hold far more carbon, and the world we know would be drastically warmer. The ugly creatures of the deep are quietly saving the surface world, one microscopic meal at a time. It's humbling, realizing that what seems remote and alien actually holds the balance of life for the entire planet. The creatures that never see sunlight influence the temperature of the air you breathe right now. The same shrimp you'd call strange or monstrous help regulate weather systems and ocean currents. The abyss doesn't just host life, it stabilizes it. Every glowing fish, every drifting jelly, every particle of marine snow is part of a cycle that keeps Earth alive. And yet, for most of human history, we ignored it. We called it barren, terrifying, lifeless. We built myths of sea serpents and devils to explain the glimpses sailors caught of its inhabitants. Even now, our language betrays our bias. We talk about the deep sea as if it were a graveyard instead of a nursery. But the more we learn, the more we realise that this darkness is not absence, it's foundation. Life didn't escape it. Life was born from it. The submersible hums softly as we drift deeper still. The instruments show that we're nearing the edge of this twilight layer, the point where even the faintest glow from above fades entirely. It's difficult to tell where the boundary lies. There's no clear line, no moment when day becomes night, just a gradual thinning of light until your eyes can't tell whether they're open or closed. The pressure rises again, the cold deepens. Somewhere below lies a world where light is no longer a memory but an invention, created by the creatures themselves. It's worth pausing for a moment to think about what that means. Life on Earth began with sunlight as its energy source, but here, far below, evolution has found another way. It built chemistry that glows, metabolisms that use heat and pressure instead of rays from a distant star. It's as if the planet itself refused to give up on life, even in places where the sun never reaches. Every flicker in the dark is proof of that stubbornness, that persistence. The abyss may look like a place where things go to die, but it's really a place where life insists on continuing, no matter how unlikely. You can almost feel it, that quiet determination. The deeper the water grows, the more it feels like you're entering a memory rather than a location. The stillness isn't lifeless, it's patient. The creatures here don't need to move quickly because the environment doesn't change quickly. Temperature, salinity, light, all constant, stable, eternal compared to the turbulence of the surface. Evolution in this part of the sea doesn't rush. It crafts slowly, making small adjustments over unimaginable spans of time. The result isn't perfection in our sense of the word, it's balance. Every feature precisely tuned to the weight of water and the scarcity of food. And now, through the submersible window, you see it again. A faint shimmer, then another. This time it's not drifting plankton, but a cluster of small fish moving together, their bodies blinking in synchronized rhythm. It's not random. Each flash follows the next, forming a slow spiral as they move. Scientists think some of these patterns are used to attract mates, others to confuse predators, but no one knows for sure. What you're watching might be communication or defense or simply an ancient reflex encoded over millions of years. Whatever it is, it's mesmerizing. For a moment you forget the cold and the pressure and the distance from home. You're just watching light talk to light. If you could stay here for days, you'd see the rhythm repeat. The night migration would rise again, the plankton would climb, the hunters would follow. Everything in this layer of the ocean moves in cycles, quiet, predictable, endless. It's not the chaos we often imagine when we think of the deep. It's order, built slowly and invisibly. The kind of order that makes the surface possible. As the submersible descends toward the darker layers below, the glow fades once more, replaced by total blackness. But it doesn't feel empty anymore. You've seen enough now to know that even in the dark, life thrives. It's just waiting beyond the range of your eyes, carrying on the business of existence. What looks like desolation is actually abundance of another kind. An abundance of patience, adaptation, resilience. And as the hum of the engines continues, as the last trace of blue vanishes entirely, you begin to sense what lies ahead. A realm where pressure rules, where light must be made rather than borrowed, where every creature looks like the product of imagination gone mad. But it isn't madness, it's logic refined in the dark. Down there the ugly will make sense, the monstrous will seem ordinary, and the strangest forms of life will begin to look like truth. The descent continues, and the world outside turns from grey to black, from shadow to silence. Somewhere far above, the sun still shines, but here, where it forgets to reach, another kind of beauty begins to take shape. The water around us is completely dark now, not the kind of darkness you find in a room with the lights off, but something thicker, heavier, a darkness that feels like a physical presence pressing in on every side. The submersible's lights cut only a narrow path ahead, a soft cone of pale illumination that reveals just a few meters at a time. Beyond that, the world could stretch on forever. You realise quickly that light down here isn't just rare, it's currency. Every flicker, every glimmer, every faint reflection of metal or scale carries meaning. In this place, where the sun has given up, life has learned to make its own glow, and that's where the monsters begin. The word monster comes easily to mind when we look into this world, but it's worth asking what we really mean by it. When you see an anglerfish with its enormous mouth and dangling light, or a viperfish with its translucent fangs, your first thought might be horror, not admiration. The faces of these creatures seem designed to unsettle, but to them their forms are not strange. They're simply necessary. Every shape, every glare, every glow has a function. Evolution here is pragmatic, not decorative. The creatures of the abyss are shaped by darkness itself, carved by the absence of light into bodies that make the most of what little energy drifts down from above. Some of these animals look like they've been stitched together from spare parts. Enormous teeth that can't fit inside their mouths, eyes far too large for their skulls, stomachs that stretch to several times their own body size. Each one looks like a mistake until you understand the conditions they live under. Down here, food is rare, so when a meal finally appears, it can't be wasted. A mouth that opens wider means more chances to catch something. A stomach that can balloon means survival during the long, empty weeks that follow. Even the teeth, jagged and unaligned, keep prey from escaping in a world where losing one meal might mean death. These are not monsters. They are equations written in flesh, balanced perfectly against scarcity. The anglerfish is the most famous of them, and for good reason. Its small body looks almost fragile, a bulbous shape trailing a thin filament tipped with a glowing lure. It hangs in the dark, motionless, letting the current move around it. The light dangles just in front of its mouth, swaying like a tiny beacon. Smaller fish, drawn by the promise of a meal or the illusion of safety, swim closer. The moment they enter the range of those needle-like teeth, the anglerfish snaps shut. It's over in less than a second. The light goes out. The sea returns to silence. To us it looks predatory, cruel, grotesque. To the anglerfish it's just breakfast. The light on its lure isn't even its own doing. It's created by colonies of bacteria living in a special organ, a partnership forged through evolution. Both species survive together, one offering a home, the other providing a glow that means the difference between life and starvation. In some species, those bacteria are passed from mother to offspring, ensuring the glow never fades through generations. In others, the fish must capture them anew from the water, cultivating them like farmers. There's something strange and beautiful in that image, a creature of darkness raising microscopic lanterns just to exist. What we see as eerie bioluminescence is really cooperation at its purest level. Move the lights a few meters further, and another shape glides through the beam. Long, thin, almost transparent, its body undulates with slow precision. It's a dragonfish, another inhabitant of this eternal night. Its teeth are curved like needles, its scales almost invisible. Along its sides run rows of tiny photophores that can flash or fade depending on its mood or its purpose. Unlike the anglerfish, it uses its light to hunt, switching it on and off in calculated bursts to disorient prey. Some species even emit red light. invisible to most other creatures. That gives the dragonfish a kind of private wavelength, its own invisible flashlight. It can stalk its prey without being seen. That red glow, faint and forbidden, is one of evolution's quiet triumphs. Everywhere you look, light behaves like language. The deep ocean has invented its own grammar of survival. There are creatures that twinkle softly to attract mates, others that flash in patterns to mark territory, some that explode in bright distracting bursts to confuse enemies. Even jellyfish use light defensively, lighting up when touched, signalling that they're not easy targets. Bioluminescence isn't a rare trick here, it's almost universal. Scientists estimate that more than 90% of the animals in the mid to deep ocean produce their own light. The sea at these depths is, in truth, not dark at all. It's just written in wavelengths we can't easily see. The idea of ugliness falls apart when you start to understand what these features do. Take the gulper eel. Its enormous mouth can open like a net, stretching wider than its own body, giving it the ability to swallow prey larger than itself. It looks absurd to us. Its head disproportionate, its body long and thread-like, its mouth a gaping cavern. But in the abyss, absurdity is efficiency. The gulper eel's shape means it doesn't have to chase. It waits, conserving energy, opening its mouth only when it senses movement. The deep doesn't reward speed. It rewards stillness, patience, and the ability to survive on little. The gulper eel's inflated jaws are not an accident. They're an inheritance perfected by time. Then there's the stoplight loose jaw, a creature that seems pulled from a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Its lower jaw is unhinged, almost skeletal, and it carries two distinct light organs beneath its eyes, one red, one blue. The blue light acts as a spotlight, helping it see. The red light, invisible to most prey, lets it hunt unseen. When it strikes, it does so with frightening precision, its jaw swinging forward like a trap on a spring. The name might sound playful, but the loose jaw is a master of ambush, one of the most effective hunters in the deep. Its body, all sharp angles and emptiness, looks grotesque in photographs, but when you watch it move, it's almost elegant. The jaw glides forward and back like machinery. Each part works in harmony, nothing wasted. Ugliness becomes grace when you understand the logic. Some of the strangest creatures down here never move at all. The siphonophores we glimpsed earlier form chains that can stretch over 100 feet long. Each small body in the chain performs a specific job, one for stinging, one for digesting, one for reproduction. Together they move as one. To the human eye, they look like strings of jelly, delicate and ghostly, but under the light they shimmer with faint colour, almost like glass sculptures. The siphonophore's beauty is subtle, mechanical, perfect in its function. There's nothing monstrous about it unless you expect the ocean to mirror us. What stands out most in this world is how adaptable life can be when light becomes scarce. The fish that live in these depths have eyes tuned to detect the faintest glow, capable of picking up single photons. Others have no eyes at all, relying instead on pressure waves and chemical cues. Some can sense electric fields, others heat, others vibration. Every sensory channel that light once dominated has been replaced or reimagined. You start to wonder whether sight was ever the most important sense at all, or if that's just the bias of creatures who live under the sun. Pressure here is unthinkable. Every square inch of surface on these animals bears hundreds of kilograms of force, and yet they move as if weightless. Their bodies are built not to resist the pressure, but to embrace it. Soft, watery tissues compress and expand as needed. Fluids replace air in their organs. Even their bones, where they have them, are spongy and flexible. On land, that softness would be fragile. Down here, it's survival. It's strange to think that in the most hostile environment imaginable, life succeeds not by being harder, but by being softer. In a way, the deep sea rewrites every rule we assume about strength and beauty. The predators here are not muscular. The prey are not fast. The hunters do not chase. Everything happens slowly, invisibly, quietly. The stiller you are, the more likely you are to live. The more you blend into the darkness, the longer your story lasts. It's a world that rewards invisibility. That alone makes it unsettling for us, a species that craves recognition and light. Down here, the ideal body isn't one that stands out. It's one that disappears. You can see it in the transparent bodies of larval fish, the invisible skin of jellies, the reflective scales that bounce light back into the void. Some species have evolved counter-illumination, glowing on their undersides with just enough brightness to cancel out the silhouette their bodies would cast from above. It's one of the most precise camouflage systems in nature, and it's all happening in a place where hardly anyone ever looks. The ocean doesn't need witnesses. It creates masterpieces for function, not for praise. As the submersible continues its descent, small sparks drift past the window. At first, you might mistake them for dust or bubbles, but they're living things. Tiny plankton, jellyfish larvae, worms, each carrying its own faint light. You start to realise how crowded this darkness is. The abyss isn't a void, it's an inverted sky. Each of those points of light is a living body, feeding, breathing, growing, drifting. The stars above and the sparks below are not so different. One burns from fusion, the other from chemistry, but both exist for the same reason: energy-seeking balance. If you could turn off the sub's lights completely, your eyes would adjust after a few minutes. You'd see flashes, pulses, slow waves of blue and green spreading across the dark. You'd see predators chase with light, prey vanish in bursts of glowing mist. Mating signals ripple through schools like synchronized fireflies. It would be both beautiful and alien, a dance of light that has nothing to do with warmth or comfort. For the creatures performing it, light is a weapon and a tool, not an ornament. The deep ocean doesn't create beauty for eyes like ours. It creates survival. It's worth remembering that our sense of ugliness comes from unfamiliarity. We see smooth faces and symmetrical shapes as pleasant because our brains evolved to recognize health and stability in those patterns. When we see something asymmetric, angular, exaggerated, our instincts warn us that something is wrong. But those instincts were built for land and sunlight. They don't apply here. The wide mouths, the glowing eyes, the transparent bodies, these are signs of thriving, not deformity. The abyssal creatures are perfect examples of life optimized for a world without light. There's something humbling in that realization. We've spent centuries painting monsters in our stories, imagining creatures that live beneath us as ugly, terrifying, unnatural. But the real monsters are not waiting in the deep to harm us. They're surviving quietly, efficiently, elegantly. They're older than we are, wiser in the ways of pressure and hunger. They don't waste. They don't destroy more than they need. They live within their limits. In that sense, maybe we are the ones who look strange to them. Bright, loud, wasteful, fragile in our need for light. The submersible glides past a slope of sediment, the beam catching shapes that move only when the light touches them. A small Dumbo octopus drifts by, its fins fluttering like ears. It's pale, almost pink, its body soft and gelatinous. It looks more like a floating balloon than a predator, but it's a master of stealth. When threatened, it can invert its body and drift away, undisturbed. Further along, a deep-sea jellyfish pulses rhythmically, each movement sending soft ripples through the water. Its body is almost transparent, but inside, faint veins of colour shift with every pulse. A quiet fireworks show in slow motion. These are the inhabitants of the darkness, unbothered by our definitions of beauty or fear. You start to see a pattern. Every adaptation that seems grotesque at first, oversized jaws, bulging eyes, soft tissues, lights that hang like bait, exists for a reason. The abyss has no room for extravagance. It strips life down to what works and discards the rest. What we call grotesque might actually be purity, biology in its most refined form. The monsters of the deep are simply the honest expression of what it takes to survive where nothing else can. And as we continue drifting downward, the bioluminescence thins out. The flashes grow rarer. The darkness deepens once more, and you can feel the pressure in your chest just from imagining it. The creatures of this next region no longer just use light. They've begun to live without it entirely. Ahead lies a world where sight itself starts to lose meaning, where the idea of ugliness disappears altogether because there's no one left to see. The deeper you go, the less the ocean cares about what things look like. It only cares about what works, and that's where we're headed next, further into the dark where light finally gives up and life becomes something else entirely. The descent continues until the faint shimmer of bioluminescence disappears altogether. The water outside the submersible is a complete void, thick and black. Not because there's nothing there, but because the light that could reveal it never arrives. You can feel the difference in your bones more than you can see it. The hull groans softly under the growing weight, a deep, steady sound like the breath of the sea itself. It's not threatening exactly, more like a reminder. Down here, pressure is not an occasional force. It's the constant reality that defines everything. Every meter deeper adds another layer, another invisible blanket of weight pressing in from every direction. At this point, the surface of the submersible holds back a force equal to several hundred tons. The human body could never survive here unprotected. A single mistake in engineering would mean instant collapse. And yet, outside the glass, creatures move effortlessly through the dark, completely unbothered by what would crush us in an instant. That's the paradox of the abyss. What feels deadly to us is home to them. The deeper the pressure, the more perfect their adaptation. At 3,000 meters, the ocean is no longer just water. It's substance, dense and cold, like the slow breath of the planet. The temperature stays near freezing. The light is gone, and the pressure is immense. But life persists in astonishing forms. Everything here has been shaped by that pressure. Every cell, every membrane, every behaviour. To survive here is not about resisting the weight, but about yielding to it completely. Imagine the creatures that live in this world. Their bodies are soft, gelatinous, almost boneless. Their skin feels more like jelly than flesh. To us, they might look unfinished, as if evolution stopped halfway. But that softness is a form of perfection. Rigid bodies would crack under pressure. Soft ones compress and rebound. Some deep-sea fish have replaced the air in their swim bladders with oil or wax, which doesn't compress like gas. Others have no bladders at all, adjusting their buoyancy by controlling salts in their tissues. There's no wasted structure, no excess decoration. The farther down you go, the more life simplifies, becoming sleek and minimal, a design refined by necessity. Pressure shapes not just bodies but behaviour. Movement here is slow because every motion costs energy. The density of the water, the resistance of the cold, the scarcity of food, all encourage stillness. Many creatures drift for hours or days without moving more than a few meters. Some wait for vibrations in the water that hint at prey. Others feed on the rain of organic matter that sinks endlessly from above. That slow drift of debris, called marine snow, becomes finer as it descends. By the time it reaches this depth, it's little more than dust, but it's still precious. Crabs, worms, and small amphipods scavenge it, recycling every particle of carbon. There's no waste down here. Every fragment is used. The system is complete. You might expect such a place to be lifeless, but it isn't. The deep-sea floor, stretching across most of the planet, is home to an extraordinary variety of life. Soft-bodied sea cucumbers glide slowly over the sediment like living vacuum cleaners, sifting particles for nutrition. Brittle stars spread their arms across the mud, catching whatever drifts down. Small white fish called rat-tails patrol the plains, long tails trailing behind them like ribbons. Even here, nearly 4 kilometres below the surface, there's motion and purpose. It just happens on a different time scale, slower than we're used to. Down here, a creature might live decades, even centuries, moving little, changing little, existing in quiet equilibrium with its surroundings. The word perfection doesn't mean beauty in the human sense, it means fit, how completely something belongs to its environment. In that sense, these animals are perfect. The deep sea doesn't reward excess, it rewards balance. The immense pressure acts as both sculptor and judge, crushing anything that resists and preserving only what yields. When we call these creatures ugly, we reveal more about ourselves than about them. We expect symmetry, colour, familiar proportions. But the deep doesn't need those things. It needs stability, efficiency, endurance. It shapes life, not to please the eye, but to sustain existence. Consider the snailfish, a species that lives deeper than almost any other vertebrate. Its body looks fragile, translucent, even delicate, but it thrives at depths beyond 8,000 metres. Its flesh contains special proteins that prevent its cells from collapsing under pressure. Its enzymes are fine-tuned to function in near-freezing temperatures. Its skeleton is partially dissolved, replaced by cartilage that bends instead of breaking. What looks soft and unformed to us is, in fact, the perfect solution to the problem of pressure. Every part of the snailfish is engineered to exist exactly here, nowhere else. If you brought it to the surface, it would disintegrate, not because it's weak, but because it's built for a world that's stronger than we can imagine. Pressure doesn't just shape anatomy, it shapes time itself. Down here, metabolism slows. Life proceeds at a pace that seems impossible by surface standards. Growth is gradual, reproduction infrequent, aging extended. Some deep-sea corals are older than human civilization. Their skeletons record chemical signatures of the ocean's past, layer by layer, like tree rings. They've been sitting in silence for thousands of years, watching the slow drift of marine snow, the occasional passing shadow of a fish, the faint tremor of distant earthquakes. In their stillness, they're witnesses to time itself. And then there are the vents. In certain places on the seafloor, cracks in the Earth's crust release scalding water rich in minerals. Around these hydrothermal vents, life takes an entirely different shape. Here, instead of sunlight, energy comes from chemistry. Bacteria feed on hydrogen sulfide, producing energy that sustains entire ecosystems. Worms, crabs, clams, even fish. The contrast is staggering. In the middle of a freezing black desert, surrounded by crushing pressure, rise towers of shimmering minerals covered in life. Giant tube worms stretch upward, white and red, each containing symbiotic bacteria that provide food. The water around them boils, yet just a few feet away it's near freezing. It's hard to imagine a more extreme boundary between death and survival. Standing in the submersible watching this, you'd realise that these creatures don't live in spite of the harsh conditions. They live because of them. The deep sea forces life to innovate, to find new ways of being alive. It's an environment that strips away everything unnecessary until only the essential remains. Pressure becomes a form of truth. It reveals what life is capable of when pushed beyond comfort. There's something strangely relatable about that. On land, we often think of pressure as a burden, something that wears us down. But down here, it's the opposite. Pressure gives structure. It holds everything together. Without it, many of these creatures would fall apart. Their existence depends on the very force we see as destructive. Maybe that's a lesson worth keeping. The idea that perfection doesn't always come from resisting pressure, but from accepting it, adapting to it, letting it shape you. The abyss teaches that endurance is not defiance, but harmony. As the submersible glides over the seabed, the lights reveal shapes that look like sculptures, but they're alive. A Dumbo octopus drifts slowly above the silt, its fins waving like small wings. It moves with no urgency, flapping gently as if in slow motion. Around it, pale anemones stand upright in the current, feeding on whatever particles drift by. A few deep-sea crabs scuttle near the base of a vent chimney, their shells ghostly white from lack of pigment. Each movement is measured, deliberate, almost ceremonial. It's not that these animals are slow, they're precise. When every motion costs energy, waste is not an option. The light from the submersible catches something else. Tiny worms weaving through the sediment, glowing faintly blue as they move. These are polychaetes, a kind of bristle worm. Their bioluminescence isn't for display. It's a defense mechanism, a way to confuse predators. When disturbed, they release a flash of light, a chemical smokescreen that distracts attackers long enough to escape. Even in the crushing dark, light remains a tool for survival. It's just used differently now, tactically, sparingly, always with purpose. Everywhere you look, function replaces form. Even colour becomes irrelevant. Down here, most creatures are black, white, or transparent. Pigment serves no purpose when there's no light to see it. The few that retain colour do so for reasons unrelated to appearance. Chemical protection, structural strength, or simple evolutionary leftover. The result is a palette that feels minimal, stripped down to essentials. It's not beauty in the way we're used to, but it's not chaos either. It's order disguised as simplicity. You begin to notice how quiet it is. The deeper you go, the less the ocean sounds like water. The hiss and creak of the submersible are the only noises you hear. The silence isn't emptiness, it's compression. Sound travels faster here, bending under the weight of the water. The creatures that live in this zone communicate through vibrations or chemical cues rather than calls. Some can sense the low hum of distant tectonic movement, others the faint ripples of a swimming neighbour hundreds of metres away. Life here listens more than it speaks. The abyssal plain stretches endlessly ahead, flat and uniform, but it's not featureless. Subtle ridges and mounds rise here and there, built from the slow accumulation of sediment. Occasionally a darker shape passes through the lights, a grenadier fish, long-tailed and watchful, its eyes adapted to see the faintest movement. It glides past without hesitation, perfectly at home. To it, we're probably no more interesting than a passing current. It lives in a world that doesn't need surprise. Everything here has settled into equilibrium. It's strange to think that this immense, silent space covers more of our planet than forests, deserts and mountains combined. The majority of Earth's surface lies in this perpetual darkness, shaped by pressure and silence. Yet we know so little about it. Each expedition reveals new species, new behaviours, new possibilities, and every discovery forces us to rethink what life can endure. The crushing world below is not barren, it's fertile in a way that defies our imagination. Even the microbes here tell a story of endurance. In the sediment beneath the seafloor, bacteria live slowly, feeding on chemical reactions that release barely measurable amounts of energy. Some divide only once every 100 years, others may have been alive since before humans discovered fire. These microscopic survivors form the foundation of the deep biosphere, an ecosystem that rivals the surface in scale. If all life above the waves disappeared tomorrow, these microbes would continue on, unbothered. They are proof that life doesn't just adapt to extremes, it thrives in them. It's easy to lose track of time here. Hours pass without notice. The environment is so constant that it feels outside of time altogether. The darkness doesn't change, the temperature doesn't change. Even the currents move so slowly that it can take centuries for water from the surface to reach these depths. You begin to sense why the creatures here live as they do. They aren't hurrying through brief lives. They exist in a kind of permanent present, shaped by forces that move too slowly for us to comprehend. Pressure, in that sense, becomes a metaphor not just for weight but for rhythm. It slows everything down, imposes calm, erases the sharp edges of urgency. Every living thing here embodies that calm. Watching them, You can almost feel your own thoughts quieting. The surface world feels impossibly far away. Its noise, its light, its speed, all irrelevant here. Down here there's only movement and stillness, balance and necessity. The instruments on the submersible flicker, showing another layer of depth ahead. The pilot adjusts the controls and the lights sweep across a new landscape. A field of black chimneys rising from the seafloor, each spewing a column of shimmering mineral-rich water. This is a vent field, a place where Earth's interior meets the ocean. The sight is surreal. The vents glow faintly in the artificial light, their surfaces coated in layers of bacteria and mineral deposits. Around them swarm creatures that shouldn't exist here at all. White crabs, ghostly shrimp, worms the size of a human arm. They live entirely without sunlight, sustained by chemosynthesis. It's a complete self-contained ecosystem built on chemistry rather than photosynthesis. It's impossible not to feel awe looking at it. The pressure here could crush steel, the water could boil flesh, and yet life flourishes. The worms live in tubes that protect them from the extremes of temperature. The bacteria inside their bodies convert poisonous gases into nourishment. Each species relies on another in a network of survival that feels impossibly delicate, and yet has endured for millions of years. It's one of the purest examples of perfection you could imagine, life tailored so precisely to its environment that it could exist nowhere else. If the creatures of the Twilight Zone were shaped by light, the creatures here are shaped by pressure. They are the children of gravity and time, sculpted slowly, relentlessly, until every cell fits the mould of this crushing world. And yet, for all its intensity, the deep sea is not hostile. It's patient. It allows life to find its place, to evolve quietly without interference. The perfection here is not in form, but in balance. The way everything fits, every process connects, every breath, every flicker of motion serving a purpose. You realize, watching through the window, that what looks like a lifeless abyss from above is in fact the foundation of the living world. The ocean's surface thrives because of the stability down here. The deep stores heat, regulates chemistry, absorbs carbon, and feeds the cycle of nutrients that sustain all other life. The crushing world below is not separate from us. It's the base upon which everything rests. The submersible hovers quietly for a moment, lights dimmed, instruments recording. Outside, the vents continue to exhale. The worms sway gently. The crabs move through their mineral forests. It feels almost wrong to disturb them, as though we've stumbled into a cathedral built by the planet itself. There's no sound but the low hum of machinery and the faint rush of water. The darkness beyond the light seems endless, but you know it's not empty. It's full of life, shaped perfectly by pressure, hidden from view, but vital to everything above. And as the engines power up again and the sub begins to move forward, deeper still, you start to understand that ugliness doesn't exist down here. There's only adaptation, the sharp teeth, the strange shapes, the translucent skins. They're not deformities, but solutions. The deep ocean doesn't make monsters, it makes survivors. The deeper we go, the more that truth becomes clear. Ahead lies even stranger life, where light itself becomes rare and every movement is an act of resilience. And so we keep descending, following the path of pressure into the stillness below, where the next shapes of life wait, unseen but inevitable. The lights from the submersible sweep slowly through the dark, and for a moment the water seems empty again. Then a shape flickers across the edge of vision, quick and deliberate. Something long, slender and jointed glides past the window, its outline blurred by the refraction of light in the heavy water. You almost don't notice the motion at first. It's too quiet, too measured. Then another shadow appears behind it, and another. They circle, pause, drift away. The deeper the descent, the clearer it becomes that life here is not passive. It waits, calculates, endures. And when the moment comes, it strikes with precision that feels almost mechanical. Down here, in the true dark, predators aren't defined by strength or speed, but by patience and design. The first creature that lingers long enough to be seen clearly looks nothing like what you'd imagine from the surface. Its mouth is too wide, its body too small, its eyes enormous. The light catches the reflective layer inside those eyes, and for a split second they shine like polished metal. It's a viperfish, one of the more efficient hunters of the mid-abyss. Its fangs curve upward from its lower jaw, so long that they can't fit inside its mouth. When it closes its jaw, the teeth slide into special grooves along the upper part of the skull. They're tools, not ornaments. The mouth opens wider than seems possible, and the body arches in a sharp line as if drawn to tension. You can almost feel the purpose behind every angle of it. There's no wasted motion, no hesitation. The viperfish glows faintly along its belly, the small points of light flickering in a rhythm that may attract prey, or perhaps mislead predators into mistaking it for something harmless. To a human eye, this creature looks grotesque, but to the ocean, it's efficient. Those teeth mean survival in a world where missing a meal can mean death. The wide jaw allows it to swallow prey larger than itself, and the glow beneath its body is not decoration but camouflage. When you see it move, the grotesque turns into grace. The body flexes in long, slow arcs. The fins spread gently, not frantic but controlled. It's the kind of movement that comes from a lifetime spent conserving energy, from an existence defined by waiting. In the space between fear and fascination, you begin to understand that these animals aren't monsters. They're the purest expression of purpose. Further ahead, the lights find another form, this one less defined. It's a floating shape, pale and translucent, trailing long threads behind it that drift like fine silk. For a moment it looks fragile, like something that could be torn apart by a current. Then one of the threads touches a smaller shadow passing by, and there's a sudden, violent reaction. The smaller shape spasms, caught, and the larger one reels it in, folding its soft body around the catch. It's a siphonophore again, a colonial creature made up of hundreds of individual parts, each performing a different role. The tentacles are lined with stinging cells that can paralyze small fish instantly. They look delicate, but each one carries enough venom to kill prey many times its size. Watching it feed is like watching a system operate, not an individual. It doesn't rush or hesitate. It just follows a sequence that's been perfected over millions of years. The deeper you go, the more this theme repeats, creatures that combine fragility and danger in the same body. Down here, survival isn't about domination but adaptation. Every organism you see is both predator and potential prey. The balance is constant, unending. Some rely on deception, others on stillness, others on overwhelming aggression. The anglerfish, with its glowing lure, is one of the best-known examples, but there are hundreds of variations. Some species have multiple lures, flickering in patterns that mimic schools of smaller fish. Others have lights hidden within their mouths, so that when they open to strike, the prey swims directly into the glow. It's not malice, it's design. One of the strangest of all is the deep-sea squid. Unlike its relatives closer to the surface, this species doesn't dart or jet away in panic. It hovers, holding its tentacles loosely before it, waiting for vibrations. When something enters range, the tentacles snap out with astonishing speed, guided by touch rather than sight. The tips of the arms are lined with hooks instead of suction cups, each one rotating to lock onto flesh. Once caught, the prey is drawn in piece by piece until it disappears into the central beak. The efficiency is clinical. Every motion is controlled, minimal, necessary. It's hard not to feel awe, even as your instincts whisper that you're looking at something dangerous. The tentacle as a design seems almost alien, yet it's one of nature's oldest tools. Flexible, sensitive, Strong. It serves as arm, hand, and sensor all in one. Many creatures here share the same basic principle: long appendages that extend into the dark to feel for movement. In a place where visibility is measured in centimetres, touch becomes the primary sense. The ocean's predators don't need to see their prey. They can feel its presence through the faintest change in pressure or current. It's a reminder that evolution doesn't favour the beautiful. It favours the adaptable. The gulper eel appears next, gliding into view like a shadow drawn on glass. Its body is long and ribbon-like, its head disproportionate, its mouth enormous. It looks like something imagined, yet there it is, real and alive. The jaw can unhinge to swallow prey larger than its own body, and when it does, the mouth expands like a parachute. It doesn't chase, it waits. Its body is too soft, its muscles too weak for pursuit. Instead, it relies on the element of surprise. A single movement, one huge gulp, and the energy of an entire week is secured. The rest of the time it drifts, saving strength, letting the current carry it. Watching it move is strangely peaceful, a kind of slow dance with physics. The form may seem bizarre, but it's exactly what this world demands. It becomes clear the longer you watch that what we call beauty is almost irrelevant here. The surface world values symmetry, colour, form. The deep values efficiency, precision, survival. Down here, the most important features are invisible: the balance of buoyancy, the chemistry of muscle, the tolerance of pressure. What looks distorted to us is normal here. The creature's odd proportions, the wide jaws, the strange lights, these are not flaws but responses. They are what perfection looks like when the environment itself is hostile to sight. Sometimes, the submersible passes through a field of transparent jellies, and for a few minutes the view is filled with drifting spheres, each one pulsing gently with a rhythm that feels almost musical. They catch the light from the vessel and scatter it, turning the dark water into a slow, silent storm of reflections. These creatures have no bones, no brain, no blood, and yet they dominate the oceans by sheer abundance. Their simplicity is their advantage. They can exist where more complex animals cannot. When food is plentiful, they multiply rapidly. When it disappears, they collapse back into the ecosystem, leaving almost nothing behind. In their formlessness, they have outlived entire lineages of predators and prey. Occasionally something larger passes behind the glass, a shape too big to identify, too quick to follow. It moves with a calm authority that suggests it has nothing to fear. The lights catch only a glimpse, perhaps a large squid, perhaps something else. Down here, even size is deceptive. Without scale, a creature could be a few inches or several meters long. The dark plays tricks with proportion, turning everything into silhouettes. You realize how small you are in this world, how little you understand of it. For every species we've named, there are likely dozens we haven't. The abyss doesn't reveal its secrets easily. The longer you stay in this environment, the more your sense of fear changes. At first, the sharp teeth and the glowing eyes seem terrifying. But as you watch them move, the fear fades, replaced by respect. There's nothing malicious about them. They're not monsters waiting to harm. They're organisms performing the simplest act imaginable, surviving. Each adaptation, every fang, every tentacle, every chemical light, is a conversation with the environment, an answer to a specific problem. If the question is how to eat in the dark, the answer might be teeth. If the question is how to find prey, the answer might be light. If the question is how to move without being seen, the answer might be transparency. Everything fits its logic perfectly. At these depths, competition is slow but constant. Prey is scarce, but it exists, drifting down in the endless snow from above. Carcasses of whales, fish, and invertebrates occasionally sink, providing massive bursts of energy. When that happens, the ecosystem transforms. Scavengers appear from every direction, each taking what it can. Hagfish burrow into flesh. releasing slime to deter competitors. Amphipods swarm, reducing a whale skeleton to bone within days. Even bacteria join in, dissolving the calcium and releasing gases that form bubbles in the sediment. These sudden feasts sustain life for years afterward. When the food is gone, everything returns to quiet. The system resets. It's during these moments that the predators show their true design. The wide jaws, the expandable stomachs, the enormous teeth, all built for opportunity. A single large meal can sustain them for months. In the dark, patience is the greatest weapon. The creatures here know that energy is everything, and waste is death. There's no chase, no frenzy, only stillness and precision. Even violence here is measured, practical, stripped of excess. There's a kind of terrible beauty in that. The teeth that look monstrous to us are works of engineering, transparent, flexible, strong. The tentacles that seem threatening are sensory tools as sensitive as fingertips. The eyes that look uncomfortably large are tuned to pick up the faintest trace of movement, detecting patterns we could never see. Every unsettling detail has a reason. It's the same logic that shapes our own species in different ways. Hands for grasping, lungs for air, eyes for light. The difference is that these creatures evolved in a world that never knew daylight. Their beauty lies in adaptation, not aesthetics. At times, the light from the sub catches small particles swirling in the water, tiny plankton, dust, fragments of the world above. It's easy to forget that all of this exists as part of one system. The surface world depends on this one. Every breath of oxygen you take began with plankton that feed the creatures of the deep. Every carbon molecule exhaled finds its way down here eventually. The abyss doesn't just hold its own beauty, it holds the planet's memory. Every living thing here is part of that record, shaped by pressure, darkness, and time. When the submersible turns and the beam sweeps over the seafloor again, you see another creature moving, slowly, carefully, across the sediment. A deep-sea crab, its claws long and jointed, its body almost colourless. It stops, raises one claw, and digs into the silt, pulling out something unseen. Its movement is delicate, deliberate, almost thoughtful. Then it moves on. The gesture is simple, but it feels significant, like a reminder that even here, life goes on in the smallest, quietest ways. You start to understand that the ocean doesn't separate beauty from brutality the way humans do. Up there, in sunlight, we see them as opposites. Down here, they're the same thing. The teeth, the tentacles, the bioluminescent tricks, they're not decorations or horrors, they're solutions to survival. The same logic that builds a flower also builds a fang. It's all chemistry and need, shaped by pressure, temperature, and time. The deep sea is full of terrible beauty because beauty itself, in its purest form, is not soft or gentle. It's simply the perfect answer to the environment. The engines hum softly as the sub continues to move forward, deeper into the stillness. Every few minutes a flicker of light passes, a reminder that the dark is never truly empty. Somewhere beyond the reach of the lamps, other creatures are moving, hunting, drifting. The sea feels alive in every direction, even if you can't see it. The realization brings a strange calm. The unknown isn't frightening anymore, it's expected. It's everywhere. If you let yourself imagine it, you could almost see the abyss not as a void, but as a garden, one designed by physics rather than sunlight. Each organism grows into its perfect form, each mechanism refined through endless trial and error. The result is not chaos, but precision. The ugliness we think we see is really the mark of a system that has perfected function beyond what we can comprehend. In the soft mechanical hum, with the lights fading slowly around you, you sense that you have only begun to understand what the deep truly is. The teeth and tentacles, the glowing eyes and strange shapes, all belong to a single story. The story of life adapting to darkness. Ahead lies more of it, stranger still, where colour itself becomes something new and light stops being an illusion. The deeper we travel, the more the idea of beauty begins to change, until it's no longer about how something looks at all, but about the fact that it exists. And so we keep drifting downward, toward where even light becomes a trick of biology, and the ocean reveals what life can look like when it no longer needs to be seen. The deeper you go, the more the idea of colour becomes meaningless. The water absorbs every wavelength of light one by one, until only the faintest traces of blue remain. At first it's subtle. The reds fade from fish scales, the greens vanish from plankton, the yellows dull to grey. But then the change becomes total. Below a certain depth, there's nothing left for the eye to see. The world loses its palette completely. What remains is a landscape that can only be understood by creatures that make their own light. Down here, darkness is not just absence, it's material. It's the canvas on which everything is drawn. When you shine the submersible's lamps into that darkness, colour suddenly reappears, but only because you brought it with you. The beams reveal pale pinks, whites, translucent blues, the truth of the deep sea's natural shades. The creatures around you aren't coloured for beauty or display. Their hues serve no purpose for sight because there's no one here to see. Most are clear, like glass, or coated in deep black skin that absorbs nearly all light. That blackness isn't a colour, it's armour. It prevents even the faintest glimmer of reflection from giving away their position. In a world where light means exposure, invisibility is survival. But then something strange happens. Out of the corner of your eye, a flicker passes. A soft pulse of blue, then another of green. Another creature answers. The black water fills with specks of light like a reversed night sky. These aren't reflections from your lamps. They're alive. The ocean paints itself in flashes of living colour. Tiny jellies pulse in electric blues. Small crustaceans flicker like sparks. Fish trails glow faintly as they move. This light isn't constant. It comes and goes in patterns, sometimes synchronized, sometimes random. To human eyes, it looks like decoration. To the animals here, it's communication, camouflage, deception, attraction, defense. It's difficult to comprehend just how much of the deep ocean glows. Scientists estimate that the majority of its inhabitants produce bioluminescence in one form or another. Some make it through chemical reactions in their bodies, others through symbiotic bacteria. The results are astonishingly varied. Blue flashes, green trails, even rare reds and violets. Each species uses it differently. Some pulse light through their skin in waves, others hold it steady like lanterns. A few can turn it on and off at will. Each flicker carries a message written in chemistry instead of sound. Imagine being able to control your own light that way. To signal fear, hunger or curiosity not with words, but with brightness and hue. A fish drifts past, its body lined with photophores, each glowing faintly in sequence. Another follows, responding with a different rhythm. It's not random, it's language, ancient and efficient. In the complete silence of the abyss, light becomes conversation. It's how mates find each other, how predators trick their prey, how the invisible stay hidden. The colours themselves tell a story about the physics of water. Blue and green wavelengths travel the farthest, which is why they dominate the deep. Red light vanishes first, absorbed completely within the first few hundred meters. That's why many deep-sea creatures are red. They appear black under the remaining wavelengths. To the human eye, they're invisible. To each other, they blend perfectly with the dark. This strange inversion means that in the deep, red isn't a warning or a sign of aggression. It's a cloak. The colour that screams danger on land becomes camouflage underwater. It's one of nature's quiet contradictions, a reminder that meaning depends on context. Some creatures have turned this to their advantage. The stoplight loosejaw, for instance, emits red light from organs beneath its eyes. invisible to most other animals. It uses that secret wavelength like a spyglass, illuminating its prey without alerting them. Its vision is tuned to see that red glow, giving it an edge in the pitch-black environment. To watch one hunt is to see light used as a weapon, as carefully and deliberately as a tool. It's not beauty or horror, it's precision. There's something hypnotic about the way the sea glows when you switch off the sub's lamps. At first, your eyes strain to adjust, but slowly faint outlines emerge. Tiny dots appear in the distance, scattered through the dark like stars. Then a wave of blue moves across your field of view as a school of lanternfish pass by. Their bodies flash in unison, hundreds of small lights moving together, each one perfectly timed with the next. For a moment, the abyss looks alive with movement, a kind of silent choreography. It's not random beauty, it's organization. The fish use these lights to recognize one another, to maintain formation, to confuse predators watching from below. It's a coordinated system built not from sight but from pulse and rhythm. The longer you watch, the more it feels like light has replaced color entirely. Every glow tells a story, every hue a function. There's no waste here, no ornamentation. Even the creatures that seem decorative, like certain comb jellies with rainbow sheens, owe their colours not to pigment but to refraction, the bending of light within their transparent bodies. What we see as shimmering iridescence is actually the ocean playing with its own physics. It's not for show, it's just what happens when light meets structure. You realise how dependent humans are on sight, how limited our perception truly is. Down here, vision means almost nothing. The eyes that remain are tuned not for colour but for contrast, for the barest difference between light and none. Some fish have enormous pupils that catch single photons, others have lost eyes altogether, replaced by sensors that detect movement or pressure. Even so, many creatures continue to use light not because they see it, but because others do. It's a chain of signal and response, a cycle that defines existence here. When you think about it, it's almost paradoxical. Life here exists in a world without sunlight, yet it's full of light. A different kind, born not from stars but from cells. It's not light that reveals the world, it's light that builds it. Without it, no one could find food, mates, or safety. The darkness paints the palette by forcing every organism to make its own colour, to write itself into the black. The ocean doesn't need the sun to sparkle, it makes its own constellations. There's a small shrimp known as the firefly squid that lives closer to the twilight zone, where a faint shimmer of sunlight still filters through. Its body is covered in tiny blue lights that it can control independently. When threatened, it flares them all at once, creating a burst of brightness that startles predators. When it hunts, it turns them off, blending into the background. During mating season, entire groups of them gather near the surface, their bodies flashing rhythmically, lighting up the sea in a living storm. For a few days each year, the deep glows brighter than the sky above it. It's a reminder that life in the dark doesn't hide from light, it creates it when it needs to. Deeper still, the light becomes more selective. Only certain wavelengths survive, only certain species carry the right chemistry to produce them. The reaction itself is elegant. A molecule called luciferin combines with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, releasing energy as light. It's the same principle that makes fireflies glow, but in the ocean, it's refined into countless variations. Some flashes last fractions of a second, others minutes. Some can be modulated, dimmed, or brightened at will. It's not instinct, it's control. The precision is astonishing for creatures without complex brains. The design comes not from intelligence but from adaptation. Over time, the light became a language coded into their very DNA. If you were to drift here long enough, you'd begin to recognize patterns. Certain flashes mean attraction, others aggression. Some are warnings, others invitations. The language of bioluminescence is vast and largely untranslated, but it's real. In its own way, it's civilization, a network of communications spanning thousands of species, each speaking in light. It's the ocean's answer to silence. Where sound is swallowed, brightness speaks. The submersible moves forward, and the lights sweep over something massive. A broad, undulating shape, pale and reflective, passes just ahead of the glass. Its edges ripple like cloth. Then, slowly, it curls, and you realise it's a jellyfish, enormous, perhaps several metres wide. Its bell pulses gently, its tentacles trailing far behind. Every pulse sends a faint wave of blue light through its body. It's not glowing constantly. The light moves through it, travelling from one side to the other, like a slow heartbeat. Each contraction illuminates the water around it for a moment before fading again. It's impossible to look away. There's something calming about its rhythm, something that feels deliberate, almost aware. You know it's not, but the illusion is powerful. It's like watching the ocean itself breathe. The pilot dims the sub's lamps and the glow becomes even clearer. You can see the faint outlines of other creatures in the distance responding to the light. A small swarm of shrimp flicker nearby. A translucent fish passes through the jelly's tentacles unharmed, reflecting the light along its body. In the absence of colour, you start to see texture instead. Smooth, rippled, layered. Every surface interacts with light differently. Even the smallest scales scatter it in unique ways. The deep sea is a gallery not of colour but of reflection. It's easy to think of this light as beautiful, but it's never just that. It's always practical. The anglerfish's lure glows to attract prey, not to impress. The squid's flash startles, the shrimp's glow warns. The plankton's sparkle summons larger predators to scare off attackers. Each light is a tactic. What looks like art is survival. And yet, that survival has created something humans can't help but call beautiful. It's a strange kind of irony that the most haunting displays of natural light on our planet come from creatures that never see the sun. Somewhere far off, the sensors pick up faint fluctuations in the water. The pilot adjusts course. Through the darkness, a trail of faint red light appears, impossible to see with the naked eye, but visible through the sub's instruments. Few creatures produce red light, but those that do use it sparingly. It's a secret signal, meant for specific eyes. You wonder how many other wavelengths exist here that humans will never perceive. Colours that no technology can yet record. The idea that the ocean might be filled with unseen colours, unknown versions of blue, green and red, changes the way you think about darkness itself. Maybe it isn't empty at all. Maybe it's just hidden. As you drift through this world of shadow and light, you realise how different it is from what you expected. The deep isn't colourless, it's colour redefined. Here, black is not absence but function, and brightness is not display but code. Every glow, every flicker, every shimmer has meaning. The palette of the abyss is limited not by the absence of light but by the precision of it. The creatures here have learned to use colour not as ornamentation, but as necessity. It's not beauty for its own sake, it's beauty with purpose. You start to think about how humans use light. We flood our cities with it, chase away the dark, fill the night with brightness until the stars themselves fade. Down here it's the opposite. Light is rare, precious, never wasted. It's used sparingly, timed perfectly, always in response to need. There's a quiet lesson in that contrast. The deep sea doesn't fear the dark. It works with it. The creatures here have learned to live not in spite of darkness, but through it, turning it into an ally. The sub-sensors register a slight rise in temperature, a sign of nearby volcanic activity. The lights reveal a faint shimmer in the water ahead. Another vent field, this one smaller than the last. The minerals here reflect light in subtle ways, turning the water into a faint mirror. Even the rocks seem to glow faintly with a metallic sheen. The creatures around them, pale and slow, shimmer faintly as they move, reflecting light that isn't really there. The darkness, it seems, paints even the inanimate world in illusion. You sit there, watching the slow dance of light through water, and you begin to understand something simple but profound. The ocean doesn't divide light and dark the way we do. Up there, one replaces the other. Down here, they coexist. The dark isn't an enemy to be defeated. It's a medium to be used. Life doesn't just tolerate it. It thrives because of it. Every flicker of light here tells that story. It's not an act of defiance against darkness, it's cooperation. And so the palette expands, not in colour, but in contrast. Every creature, every reflection, every spark is part of a spectrum of function. The darkness isn't blankness, it's the background that makes every glow meaningful. Without it, the beauty would vanish. The deep doesn't need more light, it needs balance. It always has. Outside, another flicker moves across the water, then another. The lights pulse in rhythm, fading one after another until the sea ahead looks alive again. You watch, silent, as the display continues, patterns repeating, signals crossing, small bursts of blue dissolving into green. The ocean paints its own story, moment by moment, unseen by most of the world above. It's a story not of emptiness, but of connection. Every flash is a life announcing itself. Every glow is proof that even here, at the edge of darkness, existence refuses to fade. And just beyond those flickers, deeper still, waits a part of the ocean where even bioluminescence begins to vanish, where communication gives way to isolation, and light, any light, becomes a rare currency. It's there, in that final stretch of darkness, that life begins to speak in other ways entirely, and where we'll drift next. The deeper you move, the quieter everything becomes. The small bursts of bioluminescence fade until only the occasional glimmer breaks the darkness, and even those are distant, faint, uncertain. The silence feels different here, not the kind that comes from emptiness, but the kind that comes from fullness, as if the water itself is thick with potential sound, waiting for something to disturb it. In this part of the abyss, light no longer serves as the main form of communication. The creatures that live here have found other ways to speak to one another, ways that don't depend on eyes. Here, touch, vibration, and chemistry replace sight and speech. It's a world of signals felt rather than seen. At these depths, sound travels farther and faster than anywhere else on Earth. The density of the water makes it an ideal medium for vibrations to move through. A low-frequency sound can travel thousands of kilometers, circling the planet several times before fading. Humans discovered this accidentally, when submarines during the Cold War detected mysterious hums and pulses that no one could explain. For a long time, we thought they were mechanical. Ships, engines, secret machines. But as the data grew, it became clear that some of the sounds came from living things. Whales calling to each other across entire oceans, squid releasing deep rhythmic clicks, fish chorusing together in patterns that followed the tides and moonlight. The abyss, once thought to be silent, is full of voices. We just can't hear them without help. Imagine that for a moment. In the dark, invisible world beneath the surface, thousands of species are constantly broadcasting, calling, sensing, responding, not with words, but with vibration. A drum of fins against water, a pulse of electricity, a chemical release, a change in colour or texture so subtle that only another of the same kind can notice. Every action carries meaning. It's not the chaos of noise, it's order, layered and deliberate. Communication here doesn't happen through language, but through behaviour that has evolved to convey information without wasting energy. There's a kind of fish called the plainfin midshipman that uses sound to find mates. The males build nests along the seafloor and hum to attract females, vibrating special muscles around their swim bladders, The hum can last for hours, a steady low-frequency drone that fills the water. If you could hear it from inside a submersible, it would sound like a generator running far away. The females respond by following the vibration, drawn to its rhythm through the dark. There's no melody, no variation, just persistence. It's simple, but it works. Down here, success doesn't come from complexity. It comes from reliability. Other species have evolved more subtle methods. Some deep-sea shrimp use small snaps of their claws to send sharp pulses through the water, both as warnings and as coordination signals. Certain crabs drum on hollow surfaces of the seabed. Even gelatinous creatures, which seem silent, can create waves through motion that carry information. The entire ocean becomes an acoustic landscape, a constant conversation between forms of life that have never seen each other. In the absence of light, sound takes on new dimensions. Whales are perhaps the most famous communicators of the deep. Their calls can travel farther than any other biological sound on Earth. The low moans and songs of blue whales, for instance, move through a natural channel in the ocean known as the sophar layer, where sound travels efficiently over vast distances. Through this channel, one whale's voice can reach another halfway around the world. What they're saying, we don't entirely know. Some of it is mating behaviour, some navigation, some social bonding, but the pattern, the repetition, and the evolution of these songs over time suggest something remarkable. Learning, culture even. Generations of whales refining their calls, passing new patterns along like melodies remembered in the dark. But not all communication here is auditory. Some of the most effective signals never produce sound at all. Electric fields, for example, serve as a hidden channel of conversation among certain species. The deep-sea electric ray can generate weak electric pulses to detect nearby movement or to communicate with others. The pulses are so faint that they don't serve as weapons, but as words. Short, coded bursts exchanged like whispers in the black. Other fish have sensitive organs that can pick up these fields, creating an invisible dialogue of electricity. Touch also becomes language in this part of the sea. Many creatures use long filaments or tentacles to feel the world around them. The vampire squid, for instance, extends delicate filaments far into the dark, sensing the faintest vibration caused by falling particles or moving prey. Its entire body acts as a receiver, interpreting changes in water flow as information. Some shrimp communicate by tapping or brushing each other, a tactile exchange as intricate as any visual display. Even pressure itself carries meaning. The movement of water around a body tells you who's near, what size they are, whether they're moving toward or away. For us, those sensations would be vague. For them, they are language. There's also chemistry, an ancient silent form of communication that predates sound or sight. Many deep-sea creatures release pheromones, chemical signals that drift through the water. These substances can attract mates, repel predators, or mark territory. The water carries the message long after the sender is gone, a scent trail of existence that other organisms follow. Some species rely entirely on these chemical exchanges, living their entire lives without ever seeing or hearing another of their kind. It's an invisible network of recognition that binds even the loneliest corners of the abyss into a system of connection. You begin to realize that life here never truly exists alone. Even in the vast stillness, every movement has an audience. Every pulse, every chemical trace, every faint tremor in the water becomes part of a web of awareness. It's not communication in the way humans understand it, not deliberate, not emotional, but it's just as real. It's instinct written into the structure of existence. Each creature responds not to meaning, but to necessity. The deep doesn't waste time on language, it uses physics instead. The ocean is full of echoes, literal and metaphorical. Sound bounces off seafloor ridges, hydrothermal chimneys, and even schools of fish, returning distorted, elongated, or softened. Submariners once called these ghost sounds false bottoms, because sonar showed solid shapes where none existed. What they were really seeing were living layers of creatures migrating together, their bodies reflecting sound waves like mirrors. In that sense, even our machines have been part of the conversation, misinterpreting the chatter of life as static. We built technology to listen, and the ocean answered in ways we weren't ready to understand. There's something humbling about that. For centuries, humans believed the deep ocean was silent. We thought sound couldn't exist in such weight and darkness. Then we learned to listen properly and discovered that silence had never been real. The noise was always there, slow, resonant, endless, just beyond our range. The same is true, perhaps, of understanding. We mistake what we can't perceive for absence, when in truth it's just communication happening in another register. The deeper the submersible descends, the more those frequencies shift. The instruments pick up low rumbles that vibrate through the hull, too deep for human ears but strong enough to feel. Some come from geological activity, vents, shifting tectonic plates, distant tremors. Others come from life. The sounds overlap, forming a low, constant hum that's neither chaotic nor melodic. It's simply there, like the ocean's own heartbeat. In that endless vibration, every creature contributes a note: the scrape of a crab's claw, the pulse of a jelly, the slow song of a whale passing thousands of meters above. It's easy to think of communication as something deliberate, but the ocean suggests otherwise. Most of these exchanges aren't chosen. They're automatic, instinctive, coded into behavior, yet they connect everything. A small movement in one part of the sea can trigger responses miles away. Sound travels fast, chemicals diffuse slowly, and touch happens only up close. But together they create continuity. Nothing here is truly isolated. Even in darkness, everything feels everything else. You start to see patterns in that. The deep ocean's method of communication is decentralized. No hierarchy, no central point of control. Every organism is both sender and receiver. Each piece of movement or sound becomes data for something else. It's a system without leaders, without direction, yet it functions perfectly. It reminds you of neural networks or the way human cities hum at night, each light and noise blending into a collective rhythm that no one individual controls. The abyss might be alien, but it's also familiar. It mirrors the structures we build, not because it imitates them, but because both are governed by the same principles of connection and response. When a whale dies and sinks to the seafloor, that too becomes communication. Not sound or signal, but transformation. The carcass releases chemicals into the water, drawing scavengers from miles around. Worms, crabs, fish, and bacteria arrive in waves, each one following the chemical cues of decay. The event becomes a kind of broadcast, calling every creature that can respond. Over time, the body becomes an ecosystem, supporting life for decades. Even death speaks here, and the message is always the same: come, feed, continue. You can see it in smaller ways too. When a vent releases new minerals, bacteria swarm to feed, and their presence draws in others. Each reaction leads to another, every act becoming a signal for the next. The deep ocean doesn't waste information, it recycles it, turning every chemical, every sound, every vibration into continuity. Communication here isn't about exchange, it's about participation. Every living thing becomes part of a feedback loop that defines the environment itself. If you could feel it directly, you might sense that the abyss hums with interaction. It's not empty. It's a constant conversation between living and non-living matter. The vents breathe, the fish hum, the pressure shifts, the chemistry reacts. Nothing is still, even if it looks that way. The communication is not linear, not a conversation from one being to another, but circular, all-encompassing. Every signal influences every other. It's a symphony where no one plays alone. It makes you wonder what communication really is. On the surface, humans talk endlessly, using words to convey thought, emotion, and intent. But down here, meaning is physical. It's not about sharing ideas, It's about survival. The fish that lights up to attract prey isn't speaking, but it's still sending a message. The whale calling in the dark isn't holding a dialogue, but its sound still shapes behaviour across oceans. Maybe communication doesn't always need understanding to exist. Maybe it only needs impact. As the sub drifts along, sensors capture faint electromagnetic fluctuations from nearby organisms. Every one of them generates a small electric field as its muscles contract. The water carries these signals outward like ripples. They're weak, but constant. The abyss is never completely still. Even without sound, even without light, life announces itself. The stillness is an illusion created by our senses. The reality is motion, exchange, feedback. And then you begin to realize something more profound. The abyss communicates not only within itself, but with the rest of the planet. The movements of deep currents, influenced by temperature and salinity, send signals that regulate global climate. The chemical exchanges at the seafloor shape the ocean's composition. Even the songs of whales travelling these depths help to spread nutrients as they dive and surface, linking ecosystems across thousands of kilometres. The deep isn't separate from the surface, it's part of a continuous dialogue that keeps Earth alive. The planet itself is communicating, slowly, quietly, but persistently. If you listen closely, even the silence speaks. The absence of sound where sound should be can mean danger, migration, or death. Predators move quietly when hunting, creating gaps in the normal background noise. Those gaps are information too. In the ocean, silence is never empty. It's strategy. Everything here, from the smallest plankton to the largest whale, understands that instinctively. The submersible's instruments hum softly, translating these vibrations into graphs and waveforms. To us it looks abstract, but to the creatures outside it's life as usual. The ocean doesn't need interpretation. It just moves, reacts, continues. And as you watch those lines pulse across the screen, you realise that in some sense, the deep sea is one vast organism constantly signalling itself into balance. Each creature is a cell, each sound a heartbeat, each flicker of motion a thought. When the sublights flicker and the world outside fades back into near-total darkness, the realisation lingers. Communication, in the end, isn't about visibility or even understanding. It's about presence. The abyss is full of it, constant, invisible, necessary. It doesn't speak in words, but it never stops saying that it's alive. And as the engines hum again and the descent continues, you sense another kind of message waiting deeper still, one not carried by sound or touch, but written into the very shapes of the creatures themselves. Patterns of adaptation, form as meaning, survival as expression. Ahead lies that gallery of the grotesque, where every curve and colour tells a story not of horror but of artistry, crafted slowly by time. The longer you drift in the dark, the more you begin to understand that the deep ocean is not chaotic. It's deliberate. Every shape, every distortion, every unsettling feature has been drawn by time with a precision no artist could match. The first reaction most people have when they see a deep-sea creature is a kind of disbelief, that something so strange could be real, that life could choose such unsettling forms. But nothing down here is accidental. The grotesque, as we call it, isn't a mistake in nature's design. It's the record of evolution written without vanity. The deep doesn't care how something looks. It only cares that it works. And in that absence of aesthetic intention, something remarkable appears, an unfiltered expression of life's creativity. The ocean at this depth is like a slow-moving museum, one built not by human hands but by pressure, chemistry, and survival. The exhibits are alive, moving through the dark corridors with the patience of centuries. Their bodies are strange, but they are perfect. Each one is a sculpture refined over millions of years, Each adaptation a response to a problem solved so completely that it becomes art without meaning to be. Consider the anglerfish again. You've seen its face in photographs. Wide mouth, tiny body, luminous lure. It's easy to call it monstrous. But imagine for a moment that you could see it without human context. No labels, no expectations, just form and function. The lure isn't decoration, it's innovation. The anglerfish carries its own fishing pole tipped with a bioluminescent bulb filled with symbiotic bacteria. The light dangles before its mouth, swaying gently in the current. Smaller fish, curious, move closer. When they do, the jaw snaps shut, teeth interlocking like a trap. It's a design so efficient that it hasn't needed to change in millions of years. Evolution stumbled upon perfection, and the grotesque became the ideal. Even stranger is the way some anglerfish reproduce. In certain species, the male is tiny, a fraction of the female's size. When he finds her, he bites onto her body and never lets go. Over time, his tissues fuse with hers. His organs dissolve, leaving only his testes intact. He becomes a permanent part of her, supplying sperm whenever needed. To us, the image borders on horror. But biologically, its efficiency in its purest form. In a world where encounters are rare, evolution removed the need for separation. What looks parasitic is actually partnership. The deep doesn't waste opportunities. You can see that same principle everywhere. The gulper eel, with its elastic mouth and slender tail, looks absurd until you realise it lives where meals might come once a month. Its massive jaw is a net and its body a balloon. When prey wanders close, it opens wide, engulfing whatever it can. The oversized mouth and undersized frame aren't deformities. They're blueprints. Every grotesque feature is a response to scarcity, not abundance. On the surface, we evolve to compete. In the deep, you evolve to endure. Then there are the transparent creatures, fish, worms, and jellies so clear they seem invisible except for their organs. Transparency here isn't fragility, it's invisibility perfected. Light passes through them without scattering, making them impossible to see. It's a kind of anti-colour, a living erasure. Their organs float like suspended ghosts, still performing the same tasks as any animals but stripped of all pretense. When you watch one drift by, it's like looking at anatomy itself, exposed and unapologetic. There's no surface to admire or disguise, just structure, pure and honest. The grotesque here is clarity. Evolution's gallery includes stranger pieces still, creatures like the barrel-leaf fish, whose head is transparent and filled with fluid. Its tubular eyes rotate inside the skull, pointing upward to watch for prey silhouetted against faint light, or forward when it's time to eat. It's as though its skull has become a window, its brain turned into a lens. To us, it looks surreal, like something made in a lab. But it's real, and its design is flawless. No wasted motion, no unnecessary structure. What we'd call bizarre is, in truth, efficiency incarnate. The more you study these bodies, the clearer it becomes that ugliness and beauty are illusions tied to familiarity. What unnerves us about these creatures is that they remind us of ourselves, not in shape, but in vulnerability. The anglerfish's grin shows what hunger looks like when stripped of grace. The gulper eel's emptiness reflects our own fear of scarcity. The transparent fish reveal the inner workings we spend our lives trying not to see. The grotesque unsettles us because it refuses to hide what life is made of. Function, instinct, consumption, and persistence. And yet, the grotesque also fascinates us because it's honest. On the surface, life often disguises its purposes. Flowers hide their reproductive parts in beauty. Animals compete through colour and form. We've built entire cultures around appearances that serve no purpose beyond signalling. But the deep doesn't bother with disguise. It wears its purpose plainly. Teeth are for killing. Light is for luring. Shapes are for survival. There's a directness in that honesty, and perhaps that's why it feels so alien. The deep shows us a world where nothing pretends, Among the most haunting of these designs is the vampire squid. Its name promises menace, but it's one of the gentlest creatures in the abyss. Its webbed arms form a cloak that it can draw over itself when threatened, turning its inside out so the spikes on its arms point outward. The display looks terrifying, but it's purely defensive. When calm, it floats peacefully, feeding on falling organic debris, not blood, but the drifting snow of life above. The grotesque name hides a quiet truth. The vampire squid is a recycler, a cleaner, a caretaker of the deep. Its form, strange as it is, keeps the ecosystem alive. Nearby, another creature glides through the dark, the black dragonfish. Its skin absorbs more than 99% of light, making it nearly invisible. Its fangs are transparent, so they don't reflect even the smallest glimmer. It carries its own lights along its belly, using them to disguise its outline when seen from below. Its entire body is a masterpiece of negative space, designed not to be seen, and yet, when caught in a beam of light, it reveals subtle iridescence, like oil on water. The grotesque becomes beautiful for just an instant, a shimmer of colour in the void, and then it vanishes again. Even the smallest details in these creatures' anatomy reveal artistry born of necessity. The translucent teeth of a viper fish, the flexible jaw of a loose jaw, the spiral intestines of a snailfish. Each one is the answer to a question posed by the abyss. How do you eat in the dark? How do you survive pressure that can crush metal? How do you find a mate when you might never meet another of your kind? Evolution answers every question with form. The grotesque is simply the record of those answers made visible. It's easy to forget that all of these forms began with something simple. Millions of years ago, when life was confined to the shallows, the rules were different. Colour mattered. Vision mattered. As species ventured deeper, they began to shed those rules one by one. Eyes grew larger or disappeared. Skin lost pigment. Structures flattened, softened, or dissolved. What remained was essence. Life reduced to function. The grotesque isn't deviation, it's distillation. It's life simplified until nothing but purpose remains. If you look closely at these creatures, I see their asymmetry, their protrusions, their unbalanced proportions. You can see time itself at work. Evolution never starts from scratch. It builds on what came before. It modifies, repurposes, reuses. A fin becomes a lure, a scale becomes armour, a pigment becomes camouflage. The grotesque, then, is the accumulation of history, every adaptation layered over the last like strokes of paint. It's not deliberate design. It's trial and error sculpted by survival. And that's why the results are so strange. They're not guided by intention, but by necessity. And necessity has no aesthetic preference. Humans have always been drawn to the grotesque, even if we don't admit it. We study monsters in myth, paint them in art, create them in fiction. But perhaps what draws us isn't horror, it's recognition. We know, deep down, that life isn't orderly. It's messy, improvisational, full of compromise. The creatures of the abyss are living reminders of that truth. They are the unedited version of existence, the draft that never needed to be polished because it works perfectly as it is. As the sub drifts forward, the lights catch something rising from the seafloor, a cluster of small, translucent spheres attached to a thin stalk. At first it looks like a plant, but it's alive in a different way. Each sphere is a larva encased in a gelatinous shell, part of a colony of deep-sea tunicates. They filter nutrients from the water, their bodies connected by thin threads of tissue. When threatened, the colony contracts as one, retreating into the mud. It's a single organism made of many, a literal example of unity through deformity. The grotesque here is collective, a body made of others. Further ahead, the lights sweep across the seafloor again, revealing a mound of brittle stars, their arms tangled in slow motion. Each one moves independently, yet together they create a pattern, weaving across the sediment like threads in a tapestry. Their arms twist and overlap, creating shapes that look chaotic but never collide. There's rhythm in the tangle, purpose in the confusion. The grotesque here is harmony disguised as disorder. The deeper you study this world, the more it starts to resemble something almost familiar. Not a nightmare, but a gallery of natural invention. If the surface world is a museum of colour and form, the deep is a museum of possibility. Everything that can exist does, in some variation. Transparent bodies, glowing jaws, flesh that stretches, bones that dissolve, teeth that bend light. It's not chaos, it's exploration. The deep sea is where evolution tries everything, keeping what works and discarding what doesn't. The grotesque, then, is not failure. It's experimentation made permanent. The thought lingers as you watch another creature drift past, one so strange it's almost unclassifiable. Its body is coiled, its fins are symmetric, its skin covered in fine, hair-like filaments that move independently. It's something between fish and eel, between motion and stillness. You can tell it's alive only by the faint ripple of its muscles. You have no name for it, and maybe there isn't one yet. Most of the species in the deep haven't been named. Some have been seen only once. Others will vanish before anyone else records them. The abyss doesn't care for discovery. It creates endlessly whether we watch or not. You realise, watching these forms, that evolution doesn't aim for beauty. It stumbles into it. The grotesque is simply beauty seen from the wrong angle. The same asymmetry that repels us also fascinates us. The same deformities that make us recoil are what make these creatures capable of surviving where no others can. Our reaction says more about us than it does about them. We're conditioned to see symmetry as perfection, smoothness as comfort, balance as rightness. But the deep doesn't know those rules. It writes its own. And in doing so, it creates art that doesn't care whether it's admired. The longer you stay here, the harder it becomes to use words like ugly. The shapes that once looked monstrous begin to make sense. The lightless eyes, the elastic jaws, the translucent skin. Each one has a story, a reason, a perfect logic behind it. What once felt grotesque now feels inevitable. It's like realising that the strange language of the deep is not alien after all, just untranslated. Every curve and fang and glow is a word in that language. The ocean has been speaking it for millions of years. We're only now learning to listen. And somewhere beyond this stretch of seafloor, deeper still, the gallery continues. More creatures shaped by pressure and patience, each more improbable than the last. You can sense them waiting in the dark ahead, each one a new sentence in this long, unending conversation between life and environment. Evolution doesn't stop here. It keeps sculpting, reshaping, refining. The abyss is never finished. The gallery never closes. And as the sub drifts forward, you can feel the next expression of life forming out there in the black, where even strangeness begins to make sense. It's strange to think that for almost all of human history the ocean was only a surface, a blue ceiling stretching to the horizon, hiding everything beneath it. We travelled on it, fished from it, drew maps of its currents and storms, but the deep itself was imagination. For centuries the abyss was mythology, a place where monsters waited to devour ships, where the edge of the world fell into darkness. The sea below the reach of sunlight belonged to fear and stories. We saw shapes in the waves and called them serpents. We felt the pull of the depths and called it evil. No one truly knew what was down there, and in a way no one wanted to. The unknown has always been easier to fill with fiction than to face with curiosity. But curiosity eventually always wins. The age of sail brought navigation, charts and exploration. The age of science brought instruments that could measure depth, pressure and temperature. Bit by bit, the ocean's mystery was chipped away. The first attempts to measure its depth came in the 19th century. when sailors began lowering weighted ropes into the sea to see how far they'd fall before hitting bottom. The results were staggering. In some places, the rope never reached anything solid, even after miles of line were spent. The world suddenly realised that the ocean wasn't just deep. It was almost infinite by human standards. A hidden world, larger than all the continents combined, waiting beneath our feet. The first person to glimpse that world wasn't a diver or an explorer in a submersible, but a biologist named Charles Wyville Thomson. In 1872, he joined an expedition aboard a ship called HMS Challenger. It was the first voyage dedicated entirely to studying the ocean itself. The crew measured depths, collected samples and recorded temperatures across the globe. When they dredged up mud and organisms from more than 8,000 metres deep, they proved something the scientific world had long doubted, that life existed in the deepest parts of the sea. Before Challenger, many believed nothing could survive there. The weight, the cold, the darkness, it all seemed impossible, but the samples told a different story. The abyss was alive. The results of that expedition changed everything. For the first time, humanity realised that the planet's largest habitat wasn't the forests or the plains, but the ocean floor. It was an entire biosphere we'd never seen. But knowing it existed and seeing it were two different things. For decades, our understanding of the deep came only from what we could drag to the surface. Fragments, corpses, distorted by pressure and temperature changes. It was like trying to understand a city by examining its rubble. The deep remained mysterious, not because it was empty, but because it was beyond reach. Then came the age of descent. In the early 20th century, a man named William Beebe decided that if he couldn't bring the deep to the surface, he would bring himself to the deep. He and engineer Otis Barton built a steel sphere called the bathysphere, a simple, heavy ball, barely large enough for two people. It had thick walls, a single glass window, and a cable connecting it to a ship above. There were no engines, no controls, just gravity pulling it downward and a winch to haul it back up. It was crude, claustrophobic and dangerous, but it worked. In 1930, Beebe descended to more than 400 metres, farther than any human had gone before. Then, in later dives, he reached over 900 metres. Through that small window, lit only by a few electric lamps, he saw a world no one had ever witnessed with their own eyes. He described fish that glowed like lanterns, creatures with lights trailing from their bodies, translucent forms that shimmered and vanished. He spoke of luminous jellyfish that looked like living chandeliers, and dark, darting shapes with teeth that seemed too long to be real. His notes read like dreams. Scientists doubted him at first. The things he described sounded too strange, too vivid. But we now know he was telling the truth. He had seen what we all would eventually confirm. The deep sea is stranger than imagination allows. The bathysphere dives mark the beginning of a new relationship between humans and the abyss. For the first time, we weren't just observers from above. We were visitors, and with that visitation came something we hadn't anticipated: humility. The deeper we looked, the smaller we felt. The ocean wasn't a void. It was complexity without end, a network of ecosystems running on rules completely different from our own. Every new descent brought discoveries that seemed to rewrite biology itself. By the 1960s, technology had advanced enough to make deeper exploration possible. The most famous descent came in 1960, when Jacques Picard and Don Walsh piloted the Trieste, a bathyscaphe designed to withstand the full weight of the ocean into the Challenger Deep, the lowest known point on Earth, nearly 11,000 metres beneath the surface. The pressure there is unimaginable, more than 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. The Trieste's windows were only a few inches wide, its hull nearly a foot thick. As it descended, the outer panels creaked and groaned under the strain. After nearly 5 hours, they touched the sea floor. They stayed only 20 minutes. Outside the small window, they saw a pale, fish-like creature, a sign of life even at the planet's deepest point. When they returned, they described not a hostile world, but one of stillness and mystery, a place that seemed eternal. That dive remained unmatched for more than 50 years. In all that time we sent machines and probes, but no one else returned to those depths until filmmaker James Cameron did in 2012. His submersible deep-sea Challenger was a technological marvel, a slender vertical capsule packed with cameras and lights, built to endure the unimaginable pressure. When Cameron descended, he did it alone, surrounded by the hum of instruments and the weight of 11 kilometers of water above. He described the experience as peaceful, not terrifying. The silence was total, the world outside alien but serene. It was the quietest place he had ever been. In the years since, a few others have followed. Scientists, engineers, private explorers, each one carrying new instruments, new sensors, new questions. Every descent reveals more of what lies hidden. We've mapped vast trenches, filmed strange creatures drifting through the dark, recorded sounds that no one can yet identify. But even now, we've explored less than 1% of the deep ocean floor. The rest remains unseen. The idea that most of our own planet is still a mystery is both unsettling and comforting. Unsettling because it reminds us how little we control. Comforting because it proves that wonder still exists. When humans first met the abyss, we didn't just discover a new environment, we discovered our own limits. The deep showed us that we are fragile, temporary, small. Every piece of technology we've built to explore it has been a kind of defiance. Fragile capsules of air pushed into a place that doesn't need air at all. Each descent is an act of faith in engineering, but also in curiosity. The abyss doesn't welcome us. It doesn't reject us either. It simply exists, indifferent to our presence. That indifference is what makes it sacred. The first videos from deep-sea submersibles shocked even the scientists who sent them. They expected lifeless sediment, empty plains. Instead, they found movement everywhere. Sea cucumbers crawling across the mud, brittle stars flexing their arms, ghostly fish hovering motionless, jellyfish pulsing slowly like lanterns drifting through fog. The footage looked unreal, like something animated rather than filmed, but it was real. The grotesque forms Beebe described decades earlier appeared on camera exactly as he had said, proof that the ocean's strangest stories were true. Over time, those images began to change the way we saw beauty itself. People used to call deep-sea creatures ugly. Now, many call them mesmerizing. The same traits that once inspired fear, the jaws, the lights, the transparency, have become symbols of mystery and wonder. Scientists study the genes that let these animals glow, the proteins that keep their cells intact under pressure, the enzymes that allow them to live in cold so extreme it stops most life. The grotesque has become the frontier of medicine, design, and technology. Evolution's hidden gallery is also a library of solutions waiting to be read. When you think about it, the deep ocean has always been a mirror. When we feared it, it reflected our ignorance. When we explored it, it reflected our ambition. When we finally understood it, it reflected our fragility. The first explorers looked into the darkness and saw monsters because they expected danger. The scientists who followed saw complexity because they expected life. What we see in the abyss has always depended on what we bring with us. It is not the ocean that changes, it's us. As the submersible glides forward, the instruments flicker with small signs of life. A faint echo here, a vibration there. The technology that once strained to survive here now thrives in it. Cameras record in darkness that would have once blinded them. Sonar maps the shape of unseen valleys and ridges. Autonomous drones move like slow fish, sending data upward through cables that stretch for miles. Humanity has begun to fill the abyss with its own signals, pings, hums, pulses of light, a kind of artificial bioluminescence. We're learning to speak in the ocean's language. But even with all that progress, something remains untouchable. There are regions so deep and remote that no machine can reach them yet. There are pressures so intense, temperatures so low, and currents so unpredictable that our technology still fails. Every year brings new advances, new cameras, stronger hulls, longer cables, but the abyss remains ahead of us, patient and unhurried. It's as though it knows we'll keep trying forever. What's remarkable is how our perception of this world has shifted over time. For centuries, we thought of the deep as a place of death. Now we know it's a place of preservation. Its cold and pressure slow decay to almost nothing. Shipwrecks lie perfectly intact for centuries. Creatures live longer here than anywhere else on Earth. The abyss doesn't destroy, it keeps. It holds history in suspension, quiet and unchanging. When humans meet the abyss, we meet the concept of time itself slowed to its lowest pace. There's an irony in how little we've disturbed it. For all our technology, for all our conquest of air and land, we've barely touched the deep. We've left footprints on the moon, but not on most of our own planet's seafloor. The deep remains the final wilderness, not because it resists exploration, but because it doesn't need to acknowledge it. It's not hostile, just indifferent. It continues without us, perfectly. And yet something in us keeps reaching downward. Every generation builds new machines to dive farther, to see what hasn't been seen. The urge isn't practical, it's instinct. Humans are drawn to darkness not out of self-destruction, but out of curiosity. The same curiosity that pushed us into space drives us down into the abyss. The difference is that space looks outward, while the deep looks inward, into our own planet, our own history, our own reflection. When humans met the abyss, we didn't just find another world. We found proof that the one we live on is still full of unknowns. The deeper the submersible moves, the more you realise that every light you bring only reveals a fraction of what's there. The rest remains hidden, and maybe it should. The abyss doesn't need to be conquered or understood completely. Its mystery is part of its balance. The deep exists as the planet's memory, unedited, unspoiled, and complete. Outside the glass, something drifts past, a soft, luminous shape, unhurried. It glows for a moment, then fades, leaving only darkness behind. It's a small reminder of where we are, of what we've entered. For all our machines and cameras, we're still guests here, visitors in a world that doesn't need witnesses to continue. As you watch the slow movement of that fading light, you can almost sense the next layer of this story. Not just what we've seen, but what we've brought with us. Our arrival in the abyss changed not only what we know, but what the ocean must now endure. Even in its patience, the deep has begun to feel our presence in ways it never did before. The question that remains is whether we can learn to coexist with it, to see without taking, to listen without altering, to understand without destroying. Because the next part of this story is no longer about discovery. It's about consequence. For a long time we thought of the abyss as something we observed, a silent witness to our curiosity, a place that revealed itself only when we arrived. But the more time we spend down here, the more it begins to feel like that idea is backward. The abyss is not a stage. It is not passive. It looks back. It reflects us in ways we never expected. Every machine we lower into it, every light we shine, every sample we take becomes part of a dialogue we didn't realize we were having. In trying to study it, we've made it study us. When humans send light into darkness, we believe we're revealing the unknown. But light doesn't just illuminate, it exposes. It shows what's there, but it also shows the one who holds it. In the deep, where everything has evolved to hide from brightness, our beams are intrusions. The fish scatter, the jellies recoil, the plankton drift away. The abyss doesn't resist us with violence. It resists us with absence. The moment we look, what we want to see retreats. Our light becomes a signal, not of discovery, but of disturbance. Every photograph of the deep is also a record of what fled before the camera arrived. There's something uncomfortable about realizing that the more we look, the less authentic what we see becomes. The abyss shows us only what it allows us to see, filtered through the effects of our presence. Submersibles hum with vibration, their lights generate heat, their propellers stir sediment that takes hours to settle. The delicate balance of stillness that defines this world is disrupted the moment we enter it. And so, every expedition, no matter how careful, carries a kind of paradox. To study the deep is to change it. To see it clearly is to make it less true. The abyss looks back not through eyes, but through reaction. It tells us what it is by how it behaves in response to us. The first explorers thought they were gazing into a world indifferent to their existence. But what they were really seeing was the ocean adapting in real time. Creatures retreating, shifting, hiding, flashing, waiting. The deep doesn't welcome or reject us. It absorbs us, adjusts around us, resumes its rhythm as if nothing happened. It doesn't need to confront. It simply endures. That quiet endurance is its most powerful form of awareness. When cameras first recorded footage from the Hadal trenches, researchers noticed something strange. The creatures living there seemed completely unbothered by the presence of enormous machines descending beside them. Fish swam calmly past the cameras. Amphipods crawled across the equipment. Nothing fled. The researchers realized that at those depths, life had adapted not just to darkness, but to constancy. The environment doesn't change quickly enough for fear to be useful. Adaptation replaces reaction. The abyss has seen countless disturbances, volcanic eruptions, landslides, shifts in chemistry, and each time it simply incorporates the change and continues. It doesn't panic. It doesn't resist. It absorbs. That's how it looks back at us, by showing us how small our actions really are in comparison to its scale of time. And yet, the longer we remain, the clearer it becomes that our presence is starting to leave marks that don't fade. The sediment cores taken from the ocean floor reveal thin layers of history, each a quiet record of what fell from above. Volcanic ash, pollen, dust, plastic. Over the past century, a new layer has appeared: microplastics, metals and isotopes from nuclear testing. Even here, 11 kilometers down, they are present. Every grain of silt carries the memory of us. The abyss doesn't need to look up to know we exist. We've written ourselves into it, not with exploration, but with residue. It's unsettling to think that the deepest parts of the planet, the ones untouched by sunlight and thought to be pure, now carry fragments of our world. Fibres from synthetic fabrics, chemical traces from industry, microscopic particles from cities half a world away. They drift downward in slow motion, joining the eternal snow of organic matter. Some settle in trenches, others are swallowed by creatures that will never see the surface. In a strange way, we've already colonized the deep, not with intent, but with neglect. The abyss is no longer untouched. It's quietly absorbing our mistakes. When the first deep-sea cameras captured footage of plastic bags tangled around sea cucumbers, it was easy to dismiss it as an anomaly. But it wasn't. Every dive since has revealed more. Bottles, nets, fragments of packaging, objects that should never exist in a world without sunlight. They drift through the same currents that once carried only plankton and shells. They descend slowly, without decay. The abyss doesn't reject them, it integrates them. Over time, creatures grow on their surfaces, bacteria digest them, turning waste into habitat. Even here, life refuses to waste opportunity. The ocean looks back by adapting to what we've done. It's a strange form of reflection, one that doesn't accuse or forgive, but simply incorporates. We spill oil, and microbes evolve to eat it. We dump metal, and bacteria develop to process it. We poison the sea, and new chemical cycles form to rebalance it. The deep doesn't retaliate, it transforms. But that transformation has limits. For every new adaptation, something else is lost. Fragile species that evolved for stability vanish when that stability changes. Sediment clouds choke filter feeders. The delicate rhythm of nutrient exchange between surface and abyss shifts subtly and in time profoundly. When humans met the abyss, we believed we were looking at something eternal. But the abyss has been watching us too, registering the drift of temperature, the slow rise of acidity, the traces of our carbon. The deep ocean is the planet's largest carbon sink, absorbing the excess heat and gas we release into the atmosphere. It has been buffering our impact for centuries, storing what would otherwise destroy the surface. But even the abyss has limits. Its circulation is slow, so slow that the water reaching the seafloor today first touched the surface hundreds of years ago. The changes we make now will take centuries to appear down here, but they will appear. The abyss remembers everything. There's a growing realization among oceanographers that the deep may be less stable than it seems. The chemical balance that allows life to thrive under pressure is precise. A small shift in temperature can alter the solubility of oxygen, the flow of currents, the distribution of nutrients. The abyss looks back at us not through anger, but through consequence. Every change we make above eventually echoes below. The ocean doesn't shout. It whispers, and its whispers are long and slow. By the time we hear them, generations have passed. In recent years, we've begun sending robotic explorers designed to monitor those whispers. Autonomous drones that move silently through the trenches, recording temperature, salinity, and chemistry. They don't just collect data, they listen. The ocean speaks in gradients, and these machines translate those gradients into patterns we can understand. It's the beginning of a new kind of dialogue, one where we finally listen instead of just observing. Still, the question lingers, what does it mean for the abyss to look back? Perhaps it means that the act of exploration is never one-sided. The observer and the observed always influence each other. When we dive, we change the environment we enter. When we bring samples to the surface, we alter the context that gave them meaning. The ocean isn't an object of study, it's a participant. Every discovery we make becomes part of its story. The data we record, the machines we leave behind, the gases we release, all of it becomes sediment. In the long view of geology, we are just another layer. The more we learn about this place, the more it teaches us about ourselves. The abyss reveals what happens when life is stripped to its essentials. No colour, no warmth, no waste. It shows us what endurance looks like when time stops being measured in days and starts being measured in ages. When we look into that mirror, the reflection is uncomfortable. We see how frantic we are, how quickly we consume, how impatient we've become. Down here nothing hurries, even death is slow. A whale carcass can feed life for decades. A single chemical change can take centuries to complete. The abyss teaches us patience by example. It shows us that survival doesn't come from speed, but from equilibrium. There's another way the abyss looks back, through sound. The ocean carries our noises farther than our lights. Ship engines, sonar pings, drilling vibrations. They all travel deep, disrupting the quiet patterns of life that depend on sound to navigate and communicate. The low-frequency hum of global industry now resonates through trenches where no human will ever go. The creatures that evolved in silence are suddenly surrounded by noise they can't escape. The abyss has begun to echo our presence in a way we can't ignore. Every mechanical hum, every propeller churn, every mining blast becomes a reminder that we're no longer visitors, we're occupants. Deep-sea mining is perhaps the clearest example of this. The nodules of metal that litter the abyssal plains, manganese, cobalt, nickel, have attracted the attention of industries looking for resources to fuel technology above. Machines are being designed to scrape the sea floor, to harvest what took millions of years to form. The sediment these machines stir up could drift for miles, smothering ecosystems we barely understand. The abyss doesn't resist, it simply receives. But if the seafloor begins to change shape, if the sediments begin to mix, if the chemical balance shifts, the entire deep water system could evolve in response. Not over millennia, but within decades. We're forcing evolution to accelerate, and evolution never moves without consequence. The abyss looks back through adaptation, but also through silence. It never answers directly. It responds with evidence. Altered chemistry, displaced species, new patterns in current and temperature. These are not punishments, but feedback. The planet itself is communicating, and the message is clear. Nothing we do disappears. The ocean is vast, but not infinite. Its patience is immense, but not without boundary. When you sit in the submersible and stare into that black water, you can feel that awareness pressing in. The silence isn't empty. It's full of response. Every movement of the sub sends vibrations outward. Every sound is absorbed. Every light fades. The abyss receives and remembers. The longer you stay, the more it feels like you're being studied in return. Not in a conscious sense. There's no mind watching you. But in a physical one. You are part of the system now, and the system is adjusting around you. That's what it means to be looked back at. It's not observation. It's incorporation. The paradox of the abyss is that it exists beyond judgment. It doesn't care if our presence is destructive or respectful. It doesn't care if we understand it or not. It reacts only according to physics and biology. And yet, that indifference is a kind of mirror. The deep shows us a world without moral framing, where everything simply is. In seeing that, we're forced to confront our own motives. We explore, we exploit, we record, we consume, all under the same impulse. The abyss exposes that impulse by reflecting it through consequence. Over time, as we study this world, we begin to sense its quiet intelligence. Not the intelligence of thought, but of structure. Everything down here is perfectly tuned to its environment. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random. The abyss has spent millions of years refining equilibrium, while we have spent centuries trying to bend environments to our will. When we look down here, what we see is not alien. It's what the world becomes when it isn't being managed. That is perhaps the most profound way it looks back at us, by reminding us how little interference nature actually needs. There are moments during exploration when that realization becomes physical. The sub drifts above a trench wall, its lights dimmed to conserve power. Outside, everything is black, but the instruments show movement. Faint, constant, all around. The sensors register sound that's not sound, movement that's not visible, life that exists just beyond the threshold of human perception. You can't see it, but you can feel it through the subtle tremors in the hull. The deep is alive, aware in its own mechanical way, responding to your presence not with curiosity or hostility, but with adjustment. That's how it looks back, by adapting in real time, quietly, efficiently. As humanity's presence grows, so too does the need to understand this reciprocity. We used to think of exploration as expansion, finding what was unknown and making it known. But now we begin to see that knowledge carries weight. Every discovery adds to the web of influence. We are no longer distant observers of nature, we are a part of its process. The abyss looks back by forcing us to see that connection. When the engines hum softly and the last lights fade into the water, you're left with a sense that this world doesn't belong to us, and that perhaps it never should. The deep has existed long before we arrived, and will exist long after we're gone. The marks we leave behind will eventually settle into sediment, compressed by time into thin bands of colour. One day, something else, another form of life perhaps, might study those layers and wonder about the strange age when the surface world reached downward and changed the dark. The abyss will remember, as it always does. And as the sub drifts upward through the still water, the sense of being watched doesn't fade. It lingers, not as fear, but as awareness. The ocean's gaze is not hostile but patient. It has seen worlds rise and fall. It has carried the memory of extinction and renewal. Now it carries the memory of us. The abyss doesn't need to speak to be understood. It only needs to continue existing, reminding us that in every attempt to look into it, we're really looking into the reflection of our own influence. Ahead lies a quieter stretch of seafloor. The sediment soft and pale, the current gentle. It feels different now. Not empty, but aware. Every drifting particle, every distant pulse, every echo feels like part of a conversation that never truly ends. And somewhere beyond this stillness, where even the machines cannot follow, the story continues. A reminder that no gaze is ever one-sided, and that the deep will always respond whether we're listening or not. The deeper we've gone, the more it's become clear that the ocean beneath us is not a solid, unchanging void. It's fragile, almost impossibly so. For all its depth and pressure and darkness, it's one of the most delicate systems on Earth. A world where balance is everything, and where even the smallest shift in temperature, chemistry or current can ripple outward through centuries. The abyss looks eternal, but it isn't. It's a living structure, breathing in slow motion, and we've only just begun to understand how easily it can be altered. From the surface, it's easy to think of the ocean as a single, endless body of water. But down here, it isn't one thing. It's thousands of separate environments stitched together. Ridges, trenches, vents, plains, each with its own climate, its own chemistry, its own form of life. Every metre of depth brings a new ecosystem, finely tuned to its exact conditions. The creatures that live near hydrothermal vents, for example, rely on the minerals that pour out from the Earth's crust. The ones living just a few kilometres away depend on the slow rain of organic matter from above. If that rain changes, if it carries more pollution or less oxygen or the wrong temperature, those creatures vanish. It's not just about survival, it's about precision. Down here, survival is balance, and balance is fragile. In the deep, life doesn't rebuild quickly. The currents that feed nutrients through the ocean move slower than any wind or river on land. They can take centuries to make a single circuit around the globe. When something changes, a shift in carbon levels, an increase in acidity, the effects don't vanish in a season. They echo through the system for generations. The deep ocean stores more carbon and heat than any other part of the planet. It regulates everything above it. The air we breathe, the climate we live in, even the weather we call normal. It is, in a sense, the planet's memory and its thermostat at once. But memory and balance both depend on time, and time is exactly what we keep taking from it. One of the quietest ways we've begun to alter the abyss is through temperature. The ocean absorbs most of the excess heat from the atmosphere. The surface warms first, but that warmth eventually sinks. Even a fraction of a degree of change can affect how oxygen dissolves, how carbon is stored, how currents move. The water that settles into the deep today carries traces of that heat with it. It will take hundreds of years for it to circulate through the system, but when it does, everything that depends on stability will feel it. Creatures that evolved for specific temperature ranges, some within half a degree, will find themselves in a world that no longer fits them. The abyss will adjust because it always does, but what disappears along the way will not return. We've already seen signs of that adjustment. Some species once thought to live only in the deepest trenches have begun to appear in shallower zones, following cooler water downward as the layers above warm. Others vanish from sight entirely, replaced by organisms that can tolerate the change. The chemistry shifts with them. Oxygen levels drop. Bacteria populations swell. The food web rearranges itself. None of this happens quickly, but it happens inevitably. The ocean's response to pressure is patience, but even patience has limits. If you could look at the seafloor through time, like a sped-up film, you'd see it moving. Not the dramatic motion of earthquakes or eruptions, but a slow drift of sediment and life. Coral skeletons building reefs that take centuries to form, sponges growing millimetre by millimetre, their shapes changing so slowly that one generation of humans would never notice. The deep ocean's corals are not like those in shallow water. They live without sunlight, relying on drifting organic matter. Some are thousands of years old, growing on the sides of undersea mountains, their structures home to entire ecosystems. When a trawling net drags across them, that history disappears in minutes. What took millennia to form can be destroyed in an afternoon. Bottom trawling, deep-sea mining, drilling, all of these reach into the abyss with a kind of mechanical blindness. The machines don't see what they're destroying, they only collect. A single trawler can flatten an area of seafloor larger than a city. In its wake, sediment clouds rise and drift, smothering nearby ecosystems for kilometres. What remains afterward looks lifeless, but it isn't dead. It's stunned, altered, trying to rebuild. The problem is that rebuilding takes longer than we can measure. In some places, coral growth is so slow that recovery from a single event could take thousands of years. We've begun to realise that some damage, even without being total, might as well be permanent on human timescales. The abyssal plains, once thought barren, are some of the most stable and interconnected habitats on the planet. They're covered in fine sediment that accumulates over millions of years, forming a kind of living carpet. Tiny worms, crustaceans and bacteria sift through it, recycling organic material. They form the base of a food web that stretches upward into the water column. It's subtle, no towering reefs, no forests of kelp, but it's vital. Disturb the sediment, and that balance collapses. The creatures that rely on the fine layers of oxygen and nutrients vanish. The carbon stored in the mud releases back into circulation. It's not just habitat that's lost, it's the planet's stability. Mining companies are beginning to eye these plains as the next frontier. The metallic nodules scattered across them, small round stones rich in manganese, cobalt and nickel, are seen as resources for batteries and electronics. They formed slowly, grain by grain, over millions of years, as minerals precipitated around tiny fragments of bone or rock. They grow a few millimetres every million years, and now machines are being built to harvest them at industrial scales. The scraping, the noise, the sediment plumes, all of it will alter the structure of these plains. The nodules themselves are home to life forms found nowhere else. Remove them, and entire species vanish with them. It's a kind of extinction that happens quietly, out of sight, without headlines. The irony is that the deep sea has always been one of the planet's best carbon sinks. Its sediments lock away what the surface world expels. Every bit of organic material that sinks into the abyss is part of a cycle that stabilizes the air we breathe. The creatures here don't just survive in isolation, they support life above. The abyss is not the end of the food chain, it's the anchor of it. When we disturb that anchor, we shift everything that depends on it, even the parts of the world we think of as far from the sea. You can see that connection clearly in how the ocean regulates climate. The global conveyor belt of currents, the thermohaline circulation, carries cold, dense water from the poles to the deep, then back to the surface in distant regions. It's a slow but vital system, distributing heat, oxygen, and nutrients across the planet. If it changes, weather patterns shift. Droughts, floods, temperature swings, they all trace back to these invisible movements. The deep ocean is the foundation of the planet's atmosphere, and yet we treat it like a vault, a place to dump carbon, heat and waste, assuming it will hold it forever. The vault, though, isn't infinite, it's filling. When scientists lower instruments to measure carbon levels in deep water, they find traces of our time. Isotopes from fossil fuels, microplastics, even caffeine molecules from wastewater. They drift through the currents, tiny and persistent. The ocean doesn't destroy them, it circulates them endlessly. Every layer of sediment becomes a page in a growing record of what we've done. In that sense, the abyss isn't just a part of nature, it's an archive, a biological and chemical logbook of our presence. And it's not just the chemical balance that's fragile. The physical world down here is constantly shaped by slow geological movement. Submarine volcanoes, hydrothermal vents, shifting plates, all of them form the backdrop for the ecosystems that thrive here. The vents themselves are some of the most dynamic habitats on Earth. Entire communities of life depend on them, feeding on the chemical energy released from beneath the crust. When those vents cool or shift, everything around them changes. Species vanish, new ones emerge. The ocean floor isn't static, it's a mosaic of fragile boundaries always on the edge of transformation. The discovery of these vent communities changed our understanding of life itself. They showed us that sunlight isn't necessary for ecosystems to exist, that life can thrive on chemical energy alone. But that same discovery also showed us how dependent life is on stability. The bacteria that power these ecosystems can only survive within narrow temperature ranges. A few degrees hotter or colder, and they die. The animals that rely on them follow. The system collapses. We've already begun to disturb these regions through exploration and mineral extraction. Each new disturbance risks breaking a chain of dependence that has held for millions of years. In the stillness of the deep, fragility isn't weakness, it's complexity. Every interaction is fine-tuned. Pressure, chemistry, motion. The creatures that live here are built to endure extremes but not variability. They can survive crushing weight, but not noise. They can handle cold, but not heat. They can persist through time, but not disruption. The abyss is resilient in the way that a crystal is resilient, strong when untouched but easy to shatter when struck. If you spend long enough in the submersible, watching the instrument's record data, you start to see that fragility as a kind of intelligence. The deep maintains itself through balance. Nothing grows unchecked, nothing dominates. Even the smallest creatures play a role in keeping the chemistry right. The bacteria recycle minerals, the worms aerate sediment, the fish distribute nutrients through movement. Every function overlaps with another. It's a web without hierarchy, one that collapses if too many strands are cut. We often think of intelligence as thought, but perhaps stability is its own form of wisdom, one that the deep has mastered far better than we have. It's easy to forget that the ocean's fragility extends upward. When the abyss warms, surface weather changes. When its currents slow, seasons shift. When its chemistry falters, coral reefs bleach. Fish migrations change, coastlines erode. The health of the surface world is tied to the balance of the unseen one beneath it. We walk on land as if it's separate, but everything we do, every industry, every emission, every piece of waste, eventually finds its way downward. The abyss is the final destination of everything we release. It's the ground beneath the ground. Some scientists have begun calling the deep ocean a sleeping giant. Not because it threatens to rise, but because of the scale of its potential change. If its carbon stores are disrupted, if methane hydrates on the seafloor begin to destabilize, the feedback could be enormous. A small shift down here could amplify into global transformation above. The abyss is slow to change, but once it does, it changes everything. That's what fragility means on this scale. Not weakness, but interdependence. When you look out through the sub's window, the realization feels tangible. The stillness you see is not peace, it's precision. Every drifting particle, every subtle current, every organism floating by is part of an unbroken system that has endured for ages without intervention. We're the first species capable of altering it consciously. The question is whether we can do that responsibly, or whether we'll leave it to adapt to us as it always has, quietly, painfully, with consequences we'll only understand centuries from now. The deep doesn't show fragility through destruction. It shows it through patience. It keeps functioning even as conditions change, absorbing as much as it can. But every system has a threshold, and every balance can break. What makes the deep remarkable isn't that it can survive anything, but that it has survived so much for so long. It's not invincible, it's enduring, and endurance, like all things, has limits. As the submersible drifts over a field of pale corals, their branches reaching upward like stone, you can almost feel the age of this place. Some of these structures began growing before human civilization existed. Their skeletons contain the chemical fingerprints of ancient climates. Each layer holds information about volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and shifting currents. They are libraries written in calcium and time, and yet they break with a touch. A passing trawl, a misplaced anchor, a single fall of debris. Any of it can erase thousands of years. The fragility of the deep is measured not in seconds, but in eras. The more we learn about this place, the clearer it becomes that protecting it isn't just about preserving beauty or biodiversity. It's about protecting stability itself. The deep sea doesn't belong to any nation. It's a shared foundation, the silent mechanism that makes the rest of the planet livable. To harm it is to weaken everything built above it. To respect it is to acknowledge that balance isn't a luxury, it's survival. The abyss doesn't ask for anything from us. It doesn't protest or resist. It endures until it can't. That silence is what makes it easy to ignore, but also what makes it sacred. Every breath of air, every stable season, every fertile field depends, in ways we barely understand, on this fragile world beneath our feet. And as we drift over it now, the sensors quietly recording, the lights moving across the sediment like soft echoes of daylight, it's impossible not to feel that everything living, from the smallest microbe here to the tallest tree above, is bound by the same invisible thread. The engines hum again, and the sub rises slowly through the black. The fragile world below recedes into shadow, unbothered, unchanged for now. But the awareness of it remains, that beneath everything we know, beneath the continents and currents and histories, lies a living foundation that carries the weight of us all, and it will keep carrying it, quietly, until the day we finally learn how to balance our curiosity with care and our discovery with restraint. The ascent begins slowly, almost imperceptibly. The engines hum at a low, steady rhythm, and the pressure outside the hull lessens by fractions that no one can feel. For hours, the view doesn't change. The same black water, the same drifting particles like dust in an endless night. It feels less like rising and more like waiting, as though the ocean is deciding whether or not to release you. In a way, it's fitting. The abyss never lets go quickly. It wants to remind you what you're leaving. Every meter upward feels like a passage through layers of time. The instruments mark the depth, but the eye can't tell the difference. The same stillness, the same slow drift of plankton and tiny creatures, all moving with a grace that makes speed seem irrelevant. Down here, nothing hurries. Every ascent feels like an intrusion on that rhythm. Humans are impatient by nature, but the deep forces a kind of discipline that can't be negotiated. The sub rises at its own pace, and there's nothing to do but watch and listen to the faint creaks of the hull as it adjusts to the changing pressure. Eventually faint movement begins to appear, not of life, but of light. The instruments register a subtle increase before your eyes do. Then, slowly, almost reluctantly, the darkness thins. It's not bright, not yet. Just a vague blue haze, barely perceptible, like the memory of daylight. For hours you've been surrounded by black so complete that your mind stopped expecting anything else. The return of colour feels alien, almost intrusive. The first photons filtering down from the surface meet the sub's lamps, and for the first time in what feels like ages, you can tell the difference between artificial light and the real thing. It's strange how gradual it is. The light doesn't flood in all at once, it seeps like water through cracks. A faint shimmer on the edges of particles, a trace of blue along the glass. The ocean doesn't suddenly become visible. It becomes textured. The outlines of things return first, then the sense of depth, then colour. It's as if you're emerging from blindness, the world rebuilding itself piece by piece. As the light strengthens, life changes shape again. The translucent forms that define the abyss give way to more solid ones. Fish with visible scales, jellies with colours faintly tinged pink or green. The creatures here live in compromise, not in full darkness, not in full light, but in the strange half-world between. Their bodies carry traces of both realms, large eyes for dimness, muted colours for camouflage, flashes of bioluminescence that still linger but fade as the sunlight strengthens. This zone, the twilight layer, feels like the ocean's memory of both day and night, a slow negotiation between the two. In that shifting light, the concept of colour starts to return, but it feels untrustworthy. The blues are too blue, the greens uncertain, the reds still absent. The eyes adjust slowly, as if relearning how to read the world. Even the sub's instruments seem to hesitate, recalibrating to the flood of new data. The silence remains, but it's a different kind of silence now. Not the heavy stillness of the abyss, but the quiet before life becomes noisy again. You can almost sense the layers of sound waiting above, pressing downward, the hum of currents, the distant cries of whales, the muted chaos of surface life filtering faintly through kilometres of water. As you rise, the animals begin to change too. Schools of small fish appear, moving in synchronised shapes that shimmer and collapse with each turn. They exist where the light is just enough to reveal them, but not enough to protect them. The deep is behind them, the surface still too far to reach. They move in groups because safety here depends on confusion, on blending motion and reflection into patterns that make individual bodies impossible to target. The ocean here is full of movement that looks coordinated but isn't. It's instinct that looks like choreography. The higher the sub goes, the more colour floods in. Shadows shorten, outlines sharpen. Even the water seems thinner, clearer, more buoyant. For the first time, you begin to see your own reflection faintly in the glass, ghosted over the water outside. It's a reminder of where you came from, the world of air and gravity, the one where eyes evolved for this light, not the one below. It's a strange feeling to realise how unnatural daylight has become after so much time in the dark. The brightness that once seemed normal now feels excessive, even harsh. Every ascent from the deep is a kind of disorientation. The mind adjusts to darkness so easily that light feels like a disruption. The colours above start to look unreal, too saturated, too sharp. The surface world will seem loud when you return, every sound amplified, every movement abrupt. Down there, everything flowed in one direction. Everything was measured. Up here, everything interrupts itself. The contrast is more than visual, it's psychological. The abyss teaches patience and the surface forgets it immediately. As the sub rises past the last of the twilight zone, the blue becomes brighter and clearer. Light now comes from every direction, scattering through the water. Shadows dissolve. The surface glow above is still distant, but you can feel its pull. Not just gravitational, but emotional. The light isn't just illumination, it's orientation. The ocean, for all its vastness, defines itself by its relationship to light. Everything below depends on what falls from above, the energy, the nutrients, even the slow rain of organic matter. Every ascent is a journey backward through that dependency, a retracing of how life connects from darkness to brightness. You start to notice small details again, bubbles rising alongside the hull, the faint distortion of light through moving water, the way the reflection of the sub's lights ripples against the glass. It's easy to overlook these things on the surface, but after the deep they feel monumental. Everything looks fragile now. Every shimmer, every motion. It's as if returning to the light makes the world more temporary, not less. When you finally glimpse the surface, it doesn't appear as a line or a ceiling. It appears as turbulence, the light breaking and folding, the patterns of waves turning into texture. The sun above flickers through the water in shafts that stretch downward and vanish before reaching you. It's the first sign of chaos after the deep's perfect stillness. The closer you get, the more movement you see. Particles spinning, small fish darting, the faint shadows of waves shifting. The ocean is still vast here, but it's no longer infinite. The horizon of light defines its limit. Breaking the surface is never dramatic from inside a submersible. There's no sudden rush of air, no cinematic moment of emergence. Just a gradual brightness, a change in sound, a sense that the pressure on your body has lightened. The light outside becomes almost blinding, not because it's stronger, but because it's unbroken. After days of darkness, even grey daylight feels brilliant. You rise into a world that feels new, but is the same one you left, unchanged except for how you see it. When the hatch opens and air floods in, it smells different than you remember. Sharper, filled with salt and wind. The sound is immediate and overwhelming. Waves against the hull, the creak of metal, distant gulls, the steady hiss of open air. After the slow quiet of the abyss, the surface feels fast. Everything moves. Everything speaks at once. You realise that the stillness below wasn't emptiness. It was order. The surface, for all its beauty, is chaos. It's easy to think of the ascent as a return, but it doesn't feel like one. It feels more like stepping between worlds that were never meant to meet. Down there, everything was precise and slow. Up here, everything changes too quickly to follow. The deep doesn't end at the surface, it simply withdraws, waiting below, patient as ever. You carry it with you whether you mean to or not. The silence, the pressure, the sense of proportion. They stay, quiet reminders that the world above is temporary and small compared to what lies beneath. The crew moves around the deck, securing lines, recording data, speaking in low, practical tones. The sunlight glints off the water, turning it silver and blinding. It feels unreal that beneath this same brightness lies everything you just left. Miles of darkness, pressure and silence, hidden by only a few meters of light. The ocean seems thinner now, fragile in its own way, as if the weight of what it contains can't possibly fit beneath such brightness. The line between the known and the unknown is so sharp it almost feels false. You look out at the horizon, and it's difficult not to think of how small it is compared to what's below. The sunlight touches only the upper skin of the ocean, a thin layer compared to the miles of black beneath. Everything that lives in that brightness depends on what happens below it. The plankton that feed fish, the currents that carry heat, the carbon cycles that shape the air. The light world floats on the dark one, fragile, unaware of how much it owes to what it can't see. For centuries, humans treated the ocean as surface, a thing to sail, to cross, to fish. The deep was myth, danger, emptiness. But once we began to descend to really see, we realised that the surface is the illusion. It's not the ocean that's shallow, it's our understanding of it. The deep isn't an abyss beneath the world, it is the world. The sunlight layer is only the skin of a body that extends into eternity. As you stand on the deck, the sound of the sea around you becomes rhythm again. The waves strike the hull, steady and familiar. You can hear voices, machines, the call of birds. The simplicity of it is comforting, but it also feels temporary. The abyss doesn't vanish when you leave it. It waits. It continues without interruption, indifferent to your return. Somewhere far below, the lights you switched off hours ago are still fading in the distance, and the creatures that drifted past the sub have already resumed their rhythm. Nothing in the deep pauses for observation. It just continues. The ascent feels complete, but in a way it isn't. The memory of the deep changes how you see the world above. The colours look louder, the air feels thinner, the light harsher. You start to notice how quickly everything here burns through energy, how loud and restless it all is. The stillness of the abyss was heavy, but it was also balanced. Up here, balance feels impossible. The deep taught you that life can exist without sunlight, without rush, without waste. The surface reminds you that life can also consume itself through abundance. As the day stretches on, the light shifts across the water, and you begin to notice something small but unmistakable. The ocean isn't empty even here. Beneath the waves, movement continues, constant and quiet. The line between darkness and light isn't a wall but a gradient, one that continues to blur even now. The surface doesn't end the story of the abyss. It carries it forward. Every current that touches this water carries traces of the deep. Every gust of wind that lifts from the sea carries its breath. The connection is everywhere. The ship begins its slow journey back to shore, and the ocean around it stretches flat and bright. You can almost forget the depth below. That's the trick of the surface. It hides its foundation so completely that you stop thinking about it. The horizon looks calm and the water reflects the sky. But you know what's beneath it now, and the knowledge doesn't fade. The fragility of the light, the patience of the dark, the endless exchange between them. It all continues, unseen. There's a moment, late in the afternoon, when the sun lowers enough that the water turns from blue to gold. The reflection is so bright that it looks solid, as if the sea itself has turned to light. It's beautiful, but it's also temporary. The colour will fade, the waves will shift, and the night will come again, erasing the surface until morning. You think of the deep during that transition. Constant, silent, unaffected by the cycle of day and night that rules everything above. The abyss doesn't rise or fall with the sun. It remains unchanged, a world that doesn't need light to exist. You realise, standing there, that the deep is not separate from you, is not a distant world or an alien realm, is part of the same planet, part of the same system that shapes your breath, your weather, your existence. The deep has always been here, carrying the weight of the surface, bearing the memory of everything that has ever lived and died above it. When you return to land, it will still be there, quiet, endless, patient, waiting beneath your feet. The ocean looks calm as the day fades, but you know that calm is an illusion. Beneath that smooth surface is pressure, movement, sound, life, the entire machinery of the planet, invisible and vital. The light you see now is only reflection. The real glow, the one that keeps the world alive, still burns in the black water below, in the slow chemical reactions and bioluminescent flickers that never reach the surface. The light up here is borrowed. The deep makes its own. Night comes and the horizon vanishes. The sea becomes dark again, but not the same darkness you left. This one feels thinner, lighter, almost friendly compared to the infinite black of the abyss. You watch the waves catch the starlight, and remember how those same stars once shone through the water as faint blue specks near the surface. Above and below, it's all the same light, scattered differently, travelling through different mediums but born from the same source. You think of the creatures still moving through the dark, of the slow, deliberate rhythm of their existence. They are still there, invisible, unbothered by your return. They don't need you to witness them to continue being. The deep doesn't depend on observation to matter. Its reality doesn't shrink or expand with attention. That's what makes it powerful. It simply is. And as the ship moves onward through the night, the engines humming softly beneath your feet, you begin to feel the weight of the abyss not as something below, but as something surrounding you. It's everywhere, supporting everything. The air you breathe, the climate you live in, the world you take for granted. All of it rests on that silent, dark foundation. The abyss isn't a place you leave behind. It's the part of Earth that makes every return possible. The stars above reflect faintly in the water, and for a moment you can't tell where the sky ends and the sea begins. It's the same illusion the ocean has always offered, the sense that there's no boundary between above and below, between light and dark, between knowing and mystery. Maybe that's the truth of it. The deep doesn't end at any depth. It continues in every direction, in every unseen layer of the world, carrying everything within it, including us. You stand there, breathing air that smells of salt and distance, and the thought settles quietly. The deep has never been a world apart. It's the world itself, seen without the distraction of light. All the brightness we live in is only the surface reflection of something deeper, steadier, and infinitely more patient. And as the ship moves onward, the lights of the surface world behind you growing smaller, you understand that the journey down wasn't about exploring something foreign. It was about remembering where everything begins, in the quiet, in the dark, in the places that don't need to be seen to exist.